It's 5:45. I'm going to call a meeting to order. Roll call, please, Rika.
Mayor Breeden.
Here.
Mr. Maurer.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
We have three present, but we do have a quorum. Mr. Martin and Mr. Heyman are absent at this time.
All right. Is there anyone who this time reserved for members of the public to address the council relative to matters on closed session? Comments may be limited to 5 minutes per person. Is there anyone who would like to address us on the closed session item? If not, we will go into closed session and we'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Ms. Breeden, we need to approve the agenda.
Pardon?
We need to approve the agenda. We can make a motion.
A motion to approve the agenda, please.
Second.
Please vote.
My apology, everybody. Trying to get it so we don't hold everybody up.
Run, Scott. You got to vote. We're voting on the agenda.
And for the record, Mr. Heyman and Mr. Martin are present. 5
Okay.
ayes, motion carries.
Now we will go into closed session. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Thank you all. Here he is. Okay, we're going to call a meeting to order. Regular session. Dave, would you lead us in the pledge, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. I'd like to ask all of us to remember that we are friends and neighbors and that we care for and respect each other, whether we agree with each other or not, and we ask the Lord's blessing on all of our decisions. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Okay, the city attorney's report.
One item, council met in closed session to discuss one item described on the agenda. Direction given, no final action taken.
Thank you. And council, if you'll join me at the podium, we have a presentation to make.
That's the representative of the hospital to come forward, and anybody here from the fire department. This is a proclamation of the City of Ridgecrest, California, Safely Surrendered Baby Awareness Month. Whereas the Safely Surrendered Baby Law was created in 2001 with the intent to save the lives of newborn infants at risk of abandonment by encouraging parents or persons with lawful custody to safely surrender the infant within 72 hours of birth with no questions asked. And whereas since 2006, the Safety Surrendered Baby Law has saved 71 infants in Kern County and placed them in loving homes. And whereas in Ridgecrest and throughout Kern County, a newborn baby can be safely surrendered into the hands of any hospital emergency room or fire station staff. And whereas the Safely Surrendered Baby Coalition, under the coordination of the Department of Human Services, works to educate Ridgecrest citizens and all Kern County residents about this important law. The coalition is made up of a small group of dedicated individuals representing a long list of agencies, nonprofits, hospitals, and stakeholders, including First 5 Kern, Ridgecrest Regional Medical Center, Kern County Fire Department, Kern Medical, Mercy and Memorial Hospitals, and Adventist Health, to name a few. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the City Council of the City of Ridgecrest, does hereby proclaim the month of February as Safely Surrendered Baby Awareness Month, and encourages all of Ridgecrest citizens to reach out and assist the Safely Surrendered Baby Coalition with their endeavors. Proclaim this 20th day of February. Signed by the mayor and the 4 council members. So, who's going to receive it? She probably wants a picture of me giving this to you. So. Click, click, click. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Breeden and the entire Ridgecrest City Council for this proclamation and for your support on this important initiative. My name is Jacqueline Maxwell. I am one of the Child Protective Services social worker for the Department of Human Services, and I'm also a Ridgecrest citizen. And today I'm representing the Safely Surrender Baby Coalition that's coordinated by my department. I'm pleased to share with you and with our community this life-saving work of Safely Surrender Baby Coalition. And as you can see with the people standing with me, and some are not here, like he mentioned, the fire department, we're not alone in this work. And we're very happy that there's so many of people supporting us. As mentioned in the proclamation, since 2006, we know of at least 71 babies who have been saved through this program. Last year alone, there were at least 8 that were saved as well. The coalition so far in Kern County includes every hospital in Kern County with an emergency room. So any baby can be surrendered in any of our hospitals with an emergency room in Kern County. Today, the city of Ridgecrest joins other cities proclaiming Safely Surrender Baby Awareness Month, including Bakersfield, Delano, Arvin, Shafter, and Taft. Thank you again for this proclamation and for allowing us the time to share this message with y'all tonight.
Thank you. Good job. Thank you. Okay, the next item is public comment. Persons wishing to address the council on matters that are within the council's jurisdiction and do not already appear in the agenda may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the City Council may not take action on an item that does not appear in the agenda. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. The public comment section of the agenda is limited to a total of 1 hour. Each speaker is asked to provide his or her name. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda? Thank you, Dave.
Well, I'm sorry, it might have been on the agenda because it was the presentation you just had. I had forgotten all about that in the light of some of the news that has been coming out of the eastern part of the nation where if the baby is born, well, and maybe with consultation with the doctor and the mother, you might also call it a late-term abortion. In other words, infanticide, a disgusting thing. And my question, I guess, on the presentation, the Department of Human Services, that's the federal services, right? Or is that the state?
Would you care to address that, please? Do you know? Doctor?
Kern County.
Because that's where the proclamation originated.
Well, I think we ought to get our local papers to send some copies of whatever they're going to put in the paper to some of the newspapers back east. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment?
Honorable members of the City Council, my name is Stephen Morgan. I'm representing the Ridgecrest Lions Club, 729 North Inyo Street. Just a quick update on where the Lions Club is in their community fundraising efforts. We still sit at about $61,000 donated from local community. We do have our fundraiser this weekend, February 23rd at Kerr-McGee Center for a dinner and live auction. We'd like to thank our table sponsors. We have Ridgecrest Regional Hospital, Cordell Construction, Desert Valleys Federal Credit Union, Gary Charlon State Farm Insurance, and Alta One Federal Credit Union. We still have a lot of tickets available. They're on sale at the Kerr-McGee Center, and they are now at Matarango, the Matarango Museum. If anyone is interested in coming to that fundraiser, take a flyer. My phone number is on there. I am Stephen Morgan. The tickets are $55 each. This is a community effort led by the Lions to gain some funding for the penny pool, and we appreciate your support. Any questions?
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay. Anybody else, please?
Madam Mayor, City Council members, Ronald Porter. I came tonight to talk about freedom of speech. And I want to make sure our city doesn't fall into that trap. Today we're controlling speech by bullying. If I wanted to sit up today and talk about LGBTQ, they'd say, oh, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe. We can't have intellectual discussions if it's silenced in that fashion. We have to be able to put that on the table and discuss it without being called names. We're adults. We need to be able to do that. We can't allow people that want to have their sole agenda without any possible feedback. And today we're running into that daily on people calling names, calling you a racist. Today in the media, I'm an old white man. I did it all. Of course, maybe that has an advantage because then I can say what I want and it still doesn't matter. But we have to be very careful that we don't step into that agenda, because if we want to solve problems, we have to have the intellectual discussion. We have to have the open discussion without name calling. And I want to make sure that we, as a community, don't go there. I'm not a racist, never have been. My best friends when I went to school are multitudes of different races. But today we have to stop that so we can have the discussion. We can all be Americans together and united. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other public comment? Okay, we will close public comment and come to council announcements. Is there anybody on the council who has any announcements? I see no announcements from the council, so we will go then to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by city staff and will be approved in one motion if no member of the council or the public wishes to make comment or ask questions. If comments or discussions is desired by anyone, then that item may be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately with public comment before action is taken. Do any members of the council wish to have them pulled? Do any member of the public wish to have any of these items pulled?
I think so, but I don't remember which one. Will you read them?
I will read them. They're on the screen, but I'll read them out loud. Proposed action to approve draft minutes of the City of Ridgecrest City Council Successor Redevelopment Agency Financing Authority, Housing Authority, Regional Meeting dated, regular meeting dated February 2nd, 2019. Item number 3. Proposed action to approve a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign the notice of completion for the Freedom Park splash pad, authorizing the city clerk to file the notice of completion and authorizing the release of funds in the amount of $730,663.52, 35 days after the recording of the notice of completion. Item number 4. Proposed action to approve a resolution authorizing grant acceptance of a grant awarded to the Off-Roads Motor Vehicle Recreation Division with the California Department of Parks and Recreation. Is there anyone who would now like to pull any of these items?
Yeah, number 4.
Okay, a motion to approve was there anybody else? Okay, a motion to approve 2 and 3?
So moved.
Second. Okay.
Okay,
1 second. Please vote. Five ayes, motion carries.
okay, item number 4. Dave?
Yes. My question, well, one of them anyway, is that this is for the grant cycle that you applied for last year, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have we got a similar grant request in for this year's?
We'll be putting one in when it's
Okay.
This is the grant that we've had for several years, ongoing. So, just depends on how much we get each year. This year we got $26,001. That's a little higher than we've gotten in the past, so it's good.
Hey, can I have the $1?
$1, yes.
Okay. Are we going to be buying any vehicles with this grant at all?
No, not this one. It's just maintenance, some overtime, educational for children, and enforcement.
Okay. In respect to the OHP stuff, I have a question. Is the 4 projects effort dead as far as the city is concerned?
I haven't heard from him in quite some
I
time.
haven't heard from Mike either.
Yeah. Because I think we ought to start looking at getting some grants to.
Well, I know that he went to the OHV grant workshop with the guys
Yeah.
and talked to the people there from OHV, so I don't know what they told him.
Well, I know that PLM has got some funding that they're going to be putting towards that, but it's only peripheral stuff. It's not going to be actually in the city. So I don't know what it would take within the city anymore. I'd have to go back and review some of that stuff. But I think that's a worthwhile project, and I hope we don't just let it die like some of the other things that die around here. And OHV grants might be a way to go to approach some of the funding that we need for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions of the chief? Thank you. Okay, motion.
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. 5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay, the next item. Proposed action to approve a resolution approving the formation of the Ridgecrest Park and Recreational Facilities Assessment District. Our city manager and also Jason Patton are going to address that, but we were going to have the attorney address some rules of how we were going to do this. Would you please do that, please?
You bet, Madam Mayor. So for the public comment after the comment on this agenda item, after the presentation by staff, and whenever the mayor invites comment, will be limited to 5 minutes.
Okay, and we are asking council and everyone else to please write down your questions so we can address them after the presentation. And that way we'll hear the presentation in one fell swoop. Okay, sirs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of City Council. We're here tonight to request the council approve 2 resolutions to move forward on the Park Assessment District. The resolutions would initiate the formation of the Park Assessment District in the filing of the engineer's report, and would also declare the city's intent to form the district, levy the assessment, and to set a public hearing date in April, wherein the ballots would be counted at that time. It would also initiate the mail ballot process. It would allow property owners 45 days to respond to the ballot. And as you know, this is the 4th time that we've had this in front of council. The first presentation was in December of 2017 when we brought up the concept and the thought of establishing a park assessment district. In January 17th of 2018, City Council approved myself to enter into a contract with Wildan Services to assist the city in forming a park assessment district. Part of the conditions of that at the time was Wildan was supposed to come back and determine whether or not the park assessment district would be viable within our community. On May 2nd, 2018, we had a public presentation wherein Wildan came back, said that or indicated that the assessment district was viable, and that City Council had then approved Wildan to move forward in completion of the engineering report, which is the founding document which enables the city to form the district. Now, at that time during the May 2nd meeting, we went over the engineering report, went over the zones and how the assessment was established. I do have members from Wildan here this evening, Mr. McGuire and Ms. Reynolds, that will be available to answer questions regarding the engineer's report and any other questions regarding the establishment of the district. And with that, I have a presentation that we can begin. Okay, the problem, the reason why we're looking at establishing the district. For over a decade, the city has experienced a significant decline in general fund revenues due to state takeaways. Since 2009, the Parks and Rec budget has decreased 22% from $2.36 million to $1.85 million today. and that doesn't include the cost of inflation over that period of time. As a result, the staffing was reduced by 33% from 29 full-time equivalent employees down to 19.33 today. That both includes part-time and full-time staff. Now, an FTA or an FTE is 280 hours of work. Consequently, the park and recreation staffing and maintenance was reduced, and many of our park facilities went in disrepair. The most notable was Penny Pool, which had the crumbling pool siding, out-of-date equipment, and poor overall condition. And in 2016, due to safety issues and lack of ADA compliant, the city was forced to close Penny Pool, which is the only public pool in the city of Ridgecrest. Now, over the last year, the city has used one-time tax allocation bond money to make facility improvements. Some of those were new playground equipment at Pearson and Upjohn Parks. We refurbished most of the Kerr-McGee Sports Complex. We did an improvement project at the Senior Center and a new splash pad at Freedom Park, which tonight you approved the final order to open that up whenever the weather's right. While these improvements were a step in the right direction, there are still several needed repairs and improvements to our facilities. And the reality is the city just doesn't have the funding in our current budget structure to make additional repairs and improvements to our sports complexes. And what that means is that we have the staffing to mow the lawns, we have the staffing to fix the sprinklers, we have the staffing to make sure that the fields are prepped for, softball and baseball. But what we don't have is the funding to upkeep the facilities over long term. We have several major repairs that need to be addressed. Now, why is it that we don't have the funding? Well, the reality is we have an extremely low general fund for our size. And in particular, one of the issues is our low property tax base. When Prop 13 was passed by the voters, and then subsequently Prop 8, passed by the Assembly and the Senate. When we began, the city of Ridgecrest had an extremely low property tax. In fact, we were the second lowest in the county, and today we still are. Right now, we receive about 5.8% of the 1% that's paid by the citizens for the property taxes. However, that assessment is based upon our 1988 valuation of our properties, not the 2019 valuation. And the reason for that is the redevelopment agency. Because when they formed the redevelopment agency in 87, 88, they included the entire city as a blight area for the redevelopment agency. Well, part of the funding from the RDA was the increment, any sort of increase in the increment went to the city to help improve the community. Well, as you all know, the RDA is gone and it's been replaced by the successor agency, and we have tax allocation bonds that won't be paid off until 2037. So we're not looking at any significant increase in our property tax until that time, and so that's part of the reason why we have a very low tax base. The other reason is our number one employer of the base doesn't pay any state or local taxes. While they provide a good living wage for a significant amount of people in our community, that is a discretionary income, which means that they can decide where they buy their products at, where they buy their cars, and how they spend their money. And it doesn't attribute to a solid tax base, like if the base has a contract with a contractor to work on their fleet, and that contractor buys parts from Napa. Well, they are tax exempt. They don't pay sales tax on those parts that they buy from Napa because it's a government project. Of course, while Measure V helped, it didn't solve all of our problems. It did significantly shore up the police department. When I was chief back in 2009, 2010, we had upwards to 38 officers that were authorized, and we got about as low as 31 before Measure L passed. And we've been able to maintain our officers at 32 sworn since. So we've been able to maintain it. We've also been able to increase our level of effort towards roads. However, those are restricted funds, and they're not to be used towards park facilities, especially capital improvement. Now here's a chart. We did some research, and we went out online, and we pulled a significant number of budgets, 2018, 2019 budgets offline. And we looked at cities that are all about our size, anywhere between, 23,000 and 30,000. And as you can see, you have on one end of the spectrum, you have Monterey with the population of 28,000, and they have a general fund of $74.8 million and a total revenue of $127.4. And what the difference between those two is that the $127.4 includes all of their enterprise funds and all their restricted revenue. So the general fund revenue is what they actually have discretion over what they spend it on. They can spend it on whatever they want. So as you can see, that we're at the bottom of the list, we're number 16. And that $15.8 million general fund number, that includes the $4.2 million that we get from Measure V. So if you look at it, if we subtracted that $4.2 million, we'd actually be at the bottom of the list. Now there's one other thing I want to point out, that we discovered this by accident when we built the list and we went through. We actually included Lemoore and 29 Palms. And what's unique about those communities is they're similar to Ridgecrest. They both have a major military installation in their community. They are a remote community, and that installation is their number one employer. So you can see the bottom three are all in a similar position as Ridgecrest. Did a property tax comparison of the same cities, minus one. There was one city, Arroyo Grande, they didn't, in their budget, they didn't differentiate between their general fund revenue. They just listed it as a one number. So I couldn't discern between the property tax. Now, if you look at the property tax amounts, we're actually at the bottom. We're at $2.3 million. Now, what that includes our property tax, secured and unsecured, and that's the number that we've been talking about that's been extremely low. I believe that number is $390,000 a year is what we get from unsecured. And then we get, I believe it's $1.7 million from the property tax in lieu of the VLF. So as you can see there, our property tax is extremely low compared to other entities our size. Now, why bring this up? It's more illustrative because they think that we have a significant amount of funding in our budget. And the reality is we don't. We're an isolated community. A significant amount of people in this town shop online. They purchase a lot of their vehicles out of town. Now, Measure V has significantly helped that because we're able to trap at least 1% of the sale for out-of-town purchases because of our use tax on Measure V. But you can see that we do have a very low general fund for a community our size. And I do believe that we do a very good job of providing services to the community with the amount of funds that we currently have. Now, if you look at our principal employers, the top 4 employers equate to about 75% of our workforce in the valley. Now, NAS China Lake, like I said, while they provide a great income, it's discretionary. They pay no vehicle tax, they pay no sales tax, they pay no property tax. Searles Valley is based in Trona, so they don't pay any sort of taxes in Ridgecrest or Kern County. Ridgecrest Regional Hospital does pay property taxes, and they also do collect sales tax. However, they're 87 of our top 100 sales tax generators. But just as a note, our top 10 sales tax generators generate about 90% of our sales tax. So what they collect is a very small amount. And of course, the school district, they're service oriented. Now, the establishment of Park Assessment District would help us would provide a reliable steady stream of funding to be able to improve and maintain our current sport complexes, parks, and facilities. Now, what I mean by that is not taking the money and supplanting it. The money that we're looking to get from the district would be only to do improvement or major maintenance projects. It wouldn't be to take $700,000 that we currently fund in maintenance and then replace it with the assessment and then do nothing. We do have a list that I will get in here in a minute of the projects that we want to complete. Also, if with the assessment, we're requesting a $49 average assessment per residential unit, half-acre commercial, and we estimate that it'd bring in about $636,000 per year. Now, I've had comments of, well, you're not asking for enough, and I agree. We could ask for more, but I think that, we believe that the $49 amount may be something that the community will tolerate, and if we earn their trust, if they want us to raise that, then they will indicate that. But I think that we can do a significant amount with that amount of money. Now, the facilities in the district is all of our parks and recreational facilities. As you can see on the list, it includes obviously Penny Pool, the Senior Center, and also the Ridgecrest Skate Park. Now, in establishing the district, they establish a radius, and really basically they want to determine the special benefit versus the general benefit. And they've broken up the city into 6 zones. And anything within a half mile or less from a facility would be a radius factor of 1. It would be a benefit factor of 1. Now, how they determine that, it's whatever parcel is closest to the nearest facility is how they determine it. And so as you can see, as you go out further in half-mile increments, the radius factor reduces by 1/10. So if your home or business is within 1.5 to 2 miles of a facility, then you have the radius factor of 0.7. And really what that means is that you just take 0.7 of 49, and that would be your assessment. I have a chart here coming up that will describe that a little bit further. But if you look at like the land use, single-family homes is a 1-unit benefit factor, which is $49. It also, for the single-family, also includes multifamily, and there's been a question about whether or not it's by the parcel or by the doorknob, that being the front door. And it's actually, if you have a duplex, it is by the unit. So if you have a duplex within a half mile of a park, your assessment would be, 49 times 2, $98. And for commercial, you're looking at a benefit factor of 2. So for every acre of usable land, it would be $98 per acre for commercial. And that also include the churches. Also, then the school district would be 1/4 of a benefit unit, and then vacant land would be a 1/5. Yes, and the votes are all weighted. So if you have let's say you're in zone 6 and you're half EBU, and you have another home that's within a half mile that's 1 EBU, the 1 EBU would have twice the weighted vote as the one that would be 2.5 to 3 miles. Now here it explains it just a little bit further. So if you have a single-family residence that is between 1 and 1.5 miles away from a park facility, the assessment would be $39.20 a year. So it'd be less than $4 a month. And if you go down, you look at the commercial, 1 acre of commercial would be $98 if you're within a half mile. And if you're within 2.5 to 3 miles, it would be $49. And I can have the representatives from Wildan maybe come up and explain that a little bit further in just a moment, if you don't mind. In fact, if you don't mind, maybe you guys can come up and just talk on that just a tad bit. Yeah. You can either sit there or go up to the podium, whichever you're more comfortable.
Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Stacey Reynolds. I'm from Wildan Financial Services, and I will go over the chart. As Ron was explaining, each area broken down by single-family, multifamily, commercial, school, and vacant lot were assigned a benefit factor. And based on that benefit factor, we came up with a radius factor that was in line with the map that we showed earlier. So each property, with regards to their radius, is then assigned a radius factor. So you take the parcel's benefit factor times their radius factor, and that's how we come up with their benefit unit. Within that benefit unit, it's charged by the assessment rate. The flat rate is $49. So then from there, you have to take that rate times the person's benefit unit. Commercials would be a little larger depending on how many acres. So if it was a 2-acre property, that would be commercial. It would be 2 acres times 2 times the 1. So 2 times 2 is 4. So they would pay twice the dollar amount, the $98. And that would be for a radius factor that's in the half-mile radius. So we showed gave the chart as an example because it can get a bit confusing. The whole assessment information for each parcel will be available to the city, and each parcel would be identified with its assessment, along with its benefit factor and its radius factor. So each property owner could have that information if needed. They can look it up on that assessment roll, and it will identify exactly where they are and exactly the amount that they have to pay. Any questions?
Now, in the proposed maintenance improvement projects, the proposed list contains several major repair and improvement projects. In fact, over 60% are major repair projects. The improvement projects were based upon a master park plan that the city had consigned, I believe, in 2011, along with the Penny Pool feasibility study. And that was prepping for, at the time, the expenditure of the tax allocation bond money, but then there was an issue with that amount of money, so everything was scaled down considerably. Now, we did hire HLA Group to consult on the project cost estimates. That's been one of the concerns that we've had from the community is how do we come up with the cost of the projects? Well, a lot of them are, like specifically Penny Pool, is based upon the feasibility study that was conducted in 2011 on the pool, but it was also based upon contractor estimates as well as HLA Group based upon their experience, because that's what they do as a business, is they design and build park facilities for communities. And so we got the best we could, the best numbers we possibly could without expending a significant amount of money, because as you know, most all these projects are a public works project, which means they have to be designed, they have to be placed into bid documents, and they have to be put out to bid, and then we get the bid results back. So it's difficult to go through the whole process because you have to pay somebody to design it, and then you have to pay an engineer to do the engineer estimate, then you have to put it out to bid, and then you're going to put it out to bid, and somebody's going to bid on it, and you have no money to pay for the project. And then when you're done, you may have a project that's been designed that you may not build for 5 or 6 years. And so it's an extreme expensive money to be able to get it to where it exactly is supposed to be at. And we've had the experience where we've gotten out on public works projects, especially on roads, where your engineer estimate is one, and by the time you get the bids back from the contractors, they can be totally off. So what we've done is we believe, our due diligence in coming up with what we believe is the estimated cost of our projects. Now, one of the things that staff has to do is if a project is chosen, then yes, we have to then get with the community, identify what, especially like Penny Pool, get with the community, find out exactly what we want, have it designed, and then you have your cost estimates, and then you can develop your budget from there, and then you put it out to bid. And that way there we can have a little bit better, use of time and money. Now here's a short video of Penny Pool in its current condition. As you can see, a lot of the siding is cracked and broken. The pool is old, and it needs to be completely redone. Now all the decking is out of ADA compliance. The chairlift for the disabled is out of ADA requirement. The building itself is out of ADA requirement. Just to be able to walk in the building and be able to step out in the pool area, you got about a 4-inch step. And so the disabled have to come through the side gate, but the side gates, the sidewalk on the side gate's not the right slope. And of course the bathrooms, they're old and dingy and they're not ADA compliant also. Then you have the parking lot, which really needs to be resurfaced. So the pools is in poor condition. Now I know that we've had volunteers that have wanted to reopen Penny Pool. Now the problem we've had on that is they want the city to participate. And once the city participates in the pool project, it becomes a prevailing wage project. That means it has to be documented appropriately, everybody has to be paid prevailing wage, and the costs get extraordinarily high. And so, although we want help, it's very difficult. Like Mr. Cordell wanted to get contractors together, but he wanted the city to participate in the amount of about $450,000. Well, once that happened, it became a prevailing wage project. We couldn't participate the way that he wanted to, even though we would like to. We were just prohibited from doing so. Now, the first priority of the district would be to reopen Penny Pool and to make the final renovations of the senior center. Now, additional proposed improvement projects would be, the renovation addition, new ball fields, new playground equipment at the parks, resurfacing of the basketball and tennis courts, the installation of new LED lights at ball fields to increase visibility and cost efficiency, and the addition of sun protective and wind structures, just to name a few. Let's talk about Penny Pool renovation. Right now, we've estimated the cost to be about $3 million to renovate and reopen Penny Pool. And that is primarily based upon a study that was consigned by the City of Ridgecrest back in 2011, which was the Penny Pool feasibility study. Now, there's a couple ways of doing it. If the assessment passes and we want to reopen it soon, we can do a certificate of participation bond to where we can take a loan out and use the money up front and reopen Penny Pool, and we'd have a debt service of about $177,000 per year for 30 years. Or if we did a 20-year loan, it'd be about $218,000 per year debt service. So if we did the 30-year loan, just as an example, we have a lot of other opportunities or options to be able to move forward on it. But if we did a $3 million loan, the debt service would be $177,000 a year, would leave us about close to $360,000 a year available for the other projects. So we would be able to, under that scenario, to be able to complete or at least accomplish a lot of the other items on the list. Now, what we're looking at for the renovation of the pool is obviously a complete renovation. We'd like to go from 6 lanes to 8 lanes for better competitive swimming. We'd have to take care of all the ADA improvements, bathrooms, walkways, facility, new wind and shade structures. And we also had the idea of putting a therapy pool to rent for medical purposes. Now, the thought that would be is we would lower the subsidization rate of the pool. When the pool was open prior, we had about a 50% subsidization rate, which meant was if we were spending $100,000, we were getting about $50,000 back in revenue. So the city was putting $50,000 to keep it open. Now, Mr. Patton has reached out to the hospital and another doctor's office, and there is an interest in having a therapy pool. Now, obviously, if we move forward on the assessment, we would have to then, work with, staff in the community to identify, one, do we need 8 lanes? And 2, would a therapy pool really help reduce the subsidy of of the pool. And of course, everything else we would do in here would make the facility, as energy efficient as we possibly could to keep the operating and maintenance costs at a minimum. Now, of course, any operating costs, the hiring of rec staff to run the pool could not be paid through the assessment because the assessment cannot be used for salaries for recreation. Now, this is just the beginning of the list. We got Penny Pool up top, Senior Center. We have done a significant amount of work at the Senior Center. We have done some work in the bathrooms. However, there's still additional work that needs to be done to make the bathrooms fully ADA compliant, make it easier for the elderly to get into the bathroom. We're looking at updating the inefficient appliances. The city pays all the utility costs at the Senior Center. So anything we can do at that facility to make it more energy efficient will help save our general fund. We're also looking at replacing the roof, which is 30 years old and beginning to leak. Now, if you look at the bottom down there, basically these are all estimated costs, and they're obviously subject to change. But they are the best estimates we have at this point in time, and we did spend good money, and to have HLA Group go over our estimates, and I could have spent another $2,300 to fly them down here from San Francisco or Sacramento, but I chose not to because I didn't think we need to spend that money for that purpose. Look at Jackson Park. Now, Jackson Park, we do have a few improvement projects, like adding a soccer field. We do have the renovation of 4 softball fields and the replace and repair fencing and turf. Now, one of the things that we would like to do, anytime we're dealing with replacing turf or dealing with watering, is we like to put the smart water system in all the facilities to help us reduce our demand on water. And I'll get into that later when we talk about Sigma. But if you look at, we got worn out tennis courts, remodel and update the bathrooms. Now we have an addition of a 2-stall bathroom near the softball fields because anybody that plays out there has to walk a distance to use the bathroom. So we do have a list of improvement and repair projects that we'd like to accomplish there. Upjohn Park, resurface worn out basketball courts, install security cameras to reduce vandalism, replace the failing roofs on the bathroom gazebo, and then obviously replace some dead trees. So most of the items there are going to be major repair items. We are looking at wanting to add additional playground equipment. I know that personally we need, the playground equipment that we have there has been a hit. I think we have a significant amount of families that take their children there to play. However, it gets busy, and sometimes there's not enough room on the playground equipment for kids to play, because I know when I take my granddaughter there, sometimes you got to wait in line. And we're also looking at adding a bathroom at Pearson Park, because that happens to be, when it was initially built, there was no bathroom that was installed there, and it would be nice to have a bathroom there for those that have their kids there playing on the playground equipment or playing basketball. Kerr-McGee Center, most of the items on this list are major repair items. If you've looked at the west side of the Kerr-McGee building, that has not been painted in the 30 years since the building was built. You're looking at replacing worn out carpet in the rooms, worn out floors on the banquet hall, replacing the inefficient heating and air conditioning units, one that's just for sooner when they keep breaking, we keep spending good money fixing them. And they're also no longer very energy efficient. And so as you can see down that list, most of them are just major repair items. Kerr-McGee Youth Sports Complex, we have done a significant amount of work out there this year. However, we didn't do all that we would like to do. We'd like to be able to add an additional soccer field over there over time and add 2 additional ball fields. Now, the reason for the ball fields is we refurbished the 3 that are there, but occasionally we need to rest the fields. And so by having a couple more fields will allow us to, retain the grass in a good condition, be able to make sure that they're that they last as long as we possibly can. Also looking at a new parking lot on the west side. Currently it's dirt. And obviously, all the facilities we like to do LED lights, one, because it reduces our energy demand, and that reduces our budget. And also the addition of security cameras to reduce vandalism. And you're looking at an estimated maintenance and improvement list of $6.8 million. Oh, I'm sorry, $16.8 million. Now, just to reiterate, the cost of these improvements are just estimates. Like I said, there's really no way that we can get an actual down to the penny number without spending a significant amount of money to do so. And at the end of the day, staff's going to do everything we possibly can that if this assessment's approved and we do these projects to bring them in at the least expensive amount possible. Some important points. By law, the funds can only be used to maintain and improve our local parks and recreational facilities. They can't be taken by the state, county, or federal government. They're restricted. Each year requires a public hearing, financial audits, and yearly reports to ensure that the funds are spent in a physically prudent and approved manner. Every year you have to bring this back to a public hearing to reapprove the engineer report to levy the assessments. And every year you have to allow input on what the new projects are going to be for that year. So it just can't be Mr. Patton deciding on his own that he's going to spend this money on whatever he feels like, and there's no input from the community. There will be public hearings, and there will be input from the community. The funds generated through the assessment can't be spent on police or roads. And then, of course, each year the council will seek public input to determine the order and priority of the maintenance improvement projects. Now, we've had feedback on, why don't we have a significant list or order list of what we're going to do? Well, my recommendation to council and the community would be is that we initially reopen Penny Pool, take care of the senior center. I mean, I've made enough presentations at the senior center, and I've heard their frustration with how that facility is. I know we've made some significant improvements, but we just need to finish that once and for all. I mean, that to me, I think, is just something we should do for the folks that are of that age, going to that facility. It needs to be in good shape. Then the rest of them, I think we need to have public hearings. We need to have public meetings and then identify each year what the priority of the community is. Because I have no idea 3 years from now, there may be something else that comes up that the community is more interested in than what was on the list. So for me, if it's approved, we have the two priorities initially, but then everything else we need to discuss and then figure out how we're going to use the money that would be as a revenue source and how we would spend it. So I think it's more for just allowing the community to help us decide. Now, a critical issue. I spent the last year as the general manager for the IWV Groundwater Authority. And as you all know, we have to have a groundwater sustainability plan by January 2020. Currently, our water basin is in critical overdraft, which basically means that we're using about 3 times the amount of water in the valley as a natural recharge. We're using about 26,000 acre feet a year, and our natural recharge is estimated at 7.8 thousand. By 2040, our basin needs to be balanced, which is going to require a significant amount of cutbacks. And more likely, it's going to require imported water. And so water is going to get expensive. Currently, the city uses about 350 to 400 acre feet a year to water our parks and facilities. Now, one of the things that staff has been working on is the new wastewater treatment facility. And we clearly understand that it has to be tertiary. We have to be able to use or reuse the water that goes through that facility to offset some of our water uses. Right now, we have about 2,700 acre feet a year that goes through that facility. We estimate we're going to have about 2,000 acre feet a year available for recycled water. And then some of that water we'll be able to use to offset our current water usage in the parks, either through recycled water purple pipe or taking credit by injecting the recycled water into a portion of the basin. Now, there's some significant work that has to be done on that through Lahontan, but it is something that we're obviously going to have to explore. So really, by 2040, the city is going to be the only entity in a position to have green space, i.e. grass. So I think it's important that we get ahead of the curve now, that we have the funding to make sure that whatever watering we do is water efficient, and that we start looking at our facilities in areas where we can remove the grass and put in xeriscaping, we do, while still strategically having grass to allow kids to play soccer, football, baseball, and just have a place eventually, which is probably going to be the only place in the valley to go where it's going to be that large of an area. So we need to get ahead of it. So having the assessment district will allow us funding as we go through these projects to make sure that everything we do is water efficient as we possibly can. Okay, big question, why? Well, first of all, is to improve the quality of life within our community. I was in the police department for 32 years before I retired. I was your chief for 10. I clearly understand quality of life. I clearly understand how having park facilities are important, how it does add value to our community in allowing people to have access to parks. It fosters a better sense of the community where people have the ability to congregate. I believe that it's going to help our top employers recruit and retain employees. Because one of the things I've heard time and time again is when people come to this town to move here, they drive around the town. And the first things they look at are the school, the parks, and the roads. Then they look around to see if there's anything familiar that they're used to seeing elsewhere, like, I don't know, Panda Express or whatever other fast food place that they've grown accustomed to having. And I think that there is an advantage. I mean, the city has, we have control over our infrastructure. We have control over public safety. We have control over our police. How safe is our community? We have control of how do we take care of our roads, but we also have control of how we take care of our facilities and are they available for the community to access? We all know that our local schools and our youth organizations rely upon these facilities. And I know that the 33 years I've been at the city, I've heard a lot of complaints, and I think even, Patton's probably heard a significant more about the status and the condition of our facilities and the frustration that youth sports have had and how much time and effort that they have to put in their own money to keep the facilities up. So I do think as a city, we have the duty and the responsibility to keep those facilities up, because I do think it does signify, do we care? And I think that this is one way that we can at least improve the community to some degree. And I guess the big question is that if not now, then when? If not us, then who? We're the only ones that can do this. The feds aren't going to fly in. There's not going to be a state grant to take care of this. If we don't take care of it, who will? Now, if the assessment doesn't pass, Mr. Patton and staff will do everything we can to make sure our facilities are in tip-top condition. But as you can see from that list, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been done for 30 years, and eventually it's going to break. So, and we're not going to really be able to offer anything better than what we currently have. In fact, all we're going to be able to offer is something less over time. So before I request the council to consider voting on the two resolutions, I'd like to this time be able to open it up to council for questions of either myself, Mr. Patton, or Ms. Reynolds.
I would like council to to present their questions and comments, and then we will open it up to the public and then come back to council. So council, does anybody have questions or statements you'd like to make? Scott, I
have a
see you
comment.
going.
Sure. So one of the common denominators that I see in reviewing this is and it dates from way back, is the lack of maintenance on whether it's parks or pool, and expansion of these areas without the forethought of the actual maintenance costs that are going to come down the road. And so I read a really interesting article today on the demise of public pools in communities across the nation today. And I'm going to get copies of that, and it's a very good read. They basically talk about, it was like reading a little custom built article for our town. We build the facilities, over time, the pools last, 20 years, they start to break down, there's not enough funding, so eventually the pools get shut down. And so it's a pretty common thing. And so what I see is that, we expand parks, we expand, and it's not just parks, but it could be other projects too. But if we don't change our paradigm thought process on how we manage that, we're going to be in the same boat down the road. So, I love the idea of the pool and the fixing the senior center. I think it's important for the community. In that same article, they talked about decreasing of juvenile delinquency and crime rates among our youth. All the benefits of pools and how that, they see the positive side of it when things are operational, and the negative side of it when it goes to, defunct or shuts down. But what I want to see is, and I'd like to, with our city manager, I've talked with him and he's already assured me of this, but I want to see money put aside for maintenance. We buy, we put a pool in, we say, okay, this pool's the average lifespan, they cover that too in this article about, at 15, 20 years, you're going to start seeing breakdown. So do you have the money set aside for that point of time, or have you funded out your bonds to a point where, the pool's paid off and now you're going to have some money now to put back into the pool? But we need to have maintenance, ongoing maintenance for that, and be, able to carry this on to the next generation. Otherwise, we're punting the can down the road. We got a new pool. It's great. Everybody enjoys it. And then 20 years down the road, there's going to be a bunch of people having to deal with the same problem. So same with the ball fields. We expand, but we don't consider the maintenance side of it. How much is it going to cost us? So that's my biggest thing that, I want to bring out on this, is that with the project funding, is that we set aside, we look at the long term, and we set aside the money for the maintenance of these projects. Anyway, that's all I have to say. But I'll try to get copies of that. It's a great article. It kind of covers a whole lot of things that we're dealing with as a community right now. But thank you.
Okay. Mike? Lindsay?
I wanted to talk about, I had some concerns over the debt service and seeing it out so far, and also not knowing what the pool project is exactly going to look like. So my concerns would be, just like we know with mortgages, the longer amount of time, the more interest you're paying, end up paying double to triple the amount. So I would like to see the debt service shorter on anything that we do, and plus that doesn't give people the idea that this is, it makes it seem more permanent.
Yeah.
So,
I do have estimates for a $2 million bond, $2.5 million bond, and $3 million bond from 10, 15, 20, and 30 years. So let's say we didn't put the therapy pool in and we were able to build a project at $2.5 million. We could have the average annual debt service at 30 years would be $148,000, 20 years would be $183,000, 15 years would be $221,000, and then 10 years would be $302,000. Mm-hmm. So that one there, we could actually, if we were at $2.5 million, we would have a rough debt service of about $221,000 a year. So we do have options, and I think that it really depends upon if it's approved and we sit down and we really do our research and find out, well, is the therapy pool viable? Do we really need to go from 6 lanes to 8 lanes to help with competitive swimming? What does the community really need? And I think from there, then we'll be able to figure out what our budget's going to be. Then we can just pick what number of year debt service that the city be comfortable with.
Then, one of my other kind of things I wanted to cover was consultants and keeping those to a minimum, as well as maximizing the purchasing contracts, because we saw that made a big difference on Upjohn and Pearson Park, and the quality of the product and quantity that we got versus if we would have done the traditional bid process. So making sure that we're really following through on not using too many consultants, and then making sure we're doing the purchasing contracts as well.
Right. Yeah, I think that can be handled, annually. We have to do a public hearing to, renew the assessment every year to be able to set the levy. And at that point in time, we have to determine what the projects are. We're also going to be discussing this during the budget for that year also. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for staff to be reporting back to City Council, because obviously all these are going to be prevailing wage projects. They're going to have to go out to bid, and that bid process is also subject to hearings through the City Council. So I do believe there'll be significant oversight to make sure that staff remains diligent in those areas.
And the Quality of Life Committee, too, would be highly involved in all of that.
Yes, that could be, yes.
Lois? Do you have anything you want to say? Okay. I'm going to wait till after I hear from you all, too. So if anyone would like to come, I'm asking you to limit your time to 5 minutes, and we will go from there. Who'd like to come up and please speak? Please identify yourself if you will.
Thank you. Woohoo! He called me beautiful. Linda Fuller. My address is on record. I'm here as a private citizen this evening in regards to the assessment, and I would like to commend Mr. Strand for the presentation. I had several questions, and he answered pretty much all of them. So kudos to you, young man. I would like to make a personal point of view in regards to the property assessment and the fact that it would be $49 a year. I did some math, and that is a wonderful number. Again, kudos to the people that did the numbers, did the information and the research. Somebody might say $49 is too much, but guys, that's $4 a month. So anyone that can't afford $4 a month, I'll see if I can get you a part-time job. It's $1 a week, and anything more than that was insignificant. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this differently. I took it down to 100 pennies, and that comes down to 14 cents a day. At $49 a year, that's 14 cents a day. That's less than a bottle of water, a cup of coffee, a gallon of gas. I just think we need to do this, and I'm all on board. Anything that I can do as a citizen to help get this off speak to anybody or help out in any manner, I would like to donate my time to do that. And again, I want to work with you guys just to make this the best little town that we can possibly have. And this is a good move. This is a move in the right direction. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Linda.
Madam Mayor, council members, first I'd like to request more than the 5 minutes under the rules that you can have.
We are limiting it to 5 minutes, and then afterwards we'll see where we are.
Well, okay. As usual, you don't follow the rules. But that being said, we need to have an actual public meeting on this where we can actually have a discussion on both sides on the issue that's being brought forth, on the list that's out there. I've asked this several times. Right now, it's basically what the citizen like I'm getting is there's a used salesman selling or used car salesman selling a car, but the mechanic can't tell you about it. Well, I have tons of questions. And in 5 minutes, you can't get them done. First off, the engineering study doesn't meet Prop 218 requirements. It has no specifics on the value of a vacant lot. A vacant lot has no value to the property owner, and you can't take the value of the property into consideration per California Supreme Court. I've said these things numerous times, but we have to address these issues. We have to let the people come in. The list that they came up with of all these projects that they want to do, they're all guesswork projects. We've never had the opportunity to address that list. This is something, if you really want to say we're being represented, we have to have the opportunity to address. We haven't. We need to bring this forth in a special meeting, says, okay, let's sit down, let's have this full discussion. Every council member's up there says, we want to have the discussion with the people. What's there? What do we want to spend our money on? They said, well, this is only $1 a month or however. It's a death of 1,000 cuts. The California keeps getting my pocketbook. And I don't use the parks. But I'll tell you one thing, that two very specific examples of why this engineering report isn't even compliant with Prop 218. One is the vacant lot. The other one is they used, like the baseball facility on Downs, Kimmergy Park. That's a specialized facility under California decisions. Again, you can't put it in a general value to the people close by unless they're using a baseball park. There's no place to go have a picnic there. It's a special use item. You can't use that under California decisions. Special value to the property owner. Of course, they always come up with this quality of life. Well, if I get into quality of life, I can go in numerous different directions. Why don't we have an auto shop so I can teach kids how to work on cars? Why don't I have a wood shop? Why don't I have a gun range? I could go on days and days and days. We're going to spend money on specialty projects to only benefit a few. All of these things that we're talking about, and I don't know how it managed to work in the past. We didn't have a public pool. We had a private pool. The baseball fields were all built by volunteers. Do we want to become a socialist society where we expect the government? I mean, that's what we're doing right now is specialty groups go out and they vote themselves the largest of the others to meet their needs. I doubt if there's anyone in this room that if I decided I wanted to build an auto shop and said, okay, I'm going to assess all you guys $49 a year because that's what I want. Not that I'm against anything, but this is what we're voting on. Are we going to say the largest? It's a socialist society. That's the reason we have communities. That's the reason we're supposed to have these discussions here where we can have open discussion on all of it. I went through the list, and I don't even agree with a lot that's on that list. The numbers they come up, well, I have no idea. $250,000 to replace the appliances in the senior center. I have no idea what they want to replace. One refrigerator? I'm just being facetious. But without that, I can't have an honest discussion. You can't make an honest decision. We have to look at this first. And one thing I want to correct you on, Mr. Strand, is under California law, unless they recently changed it, when a car is bought outside of the city, big purchase item, the sales tax is supposed to come here under California law. Even if I go to Los Angeles and buy it and I have a residence here, it's supposed to come to the address of the residence. So the car is really not a good example. But we thought, where's the benefit to the property owners? I don't understand how you come up with this. There's nothing I can find in the law to show that. The engineering study was what I call a self-fulfilling document, which they always are. They go through and there's a bunch of lawyers and people figure, how can I justify this? I do have one question before my light goes off. Why is the lighting district even mentioned in this? I've read the statute on lighting district. It has nothing to do with this. Why is it even in the document?
Thank you.
Can anyone answer that question?
We're going to answer some of these questions as we get done, so we don't want to answer them all over again each time. Thank you.
As usual, no answers to the public.
This item has been at council 4 different times.
Everybody hasn't been here 4 different times.
That's correct, and we still haven't had a public.
Anyway, Dave Matthews, my address is on file. My first impression is to repeat a phrase that's been heard several times. Read my lips, no new taxes. That's not a promise, that is a request. And I have made that several times, perhaps at this podium as well as the county podium. However, there is a source of taxes that apparently the city has no income from. And I just said it. The income tax. Everybody that has a wage or income of any kind, and in my case it's not a wage, it happens to be a retirement fund and Social Security. And they even tax Social Security on the income. And I just got through having my taxes done, and I'm paying more taxes than I think I should. So why don't we, as a city, start putting pressure on the state, at least, to get some of those income taxes? Where do they go? I don't know. It goes to Sacramento and gets spent. That's all I know. And we don't really get any benefit from it here locally. So let's start putting pressure on the state to get some of those taxes. Now, more specifically to the presentation here tonight, Mr. Patton, I don't think I saw any mention of improving park field lighting. Maybe I missed it, but that I think should be on the list also.
That's on the list, Dave.
Is it? Okay, thank you. The other thing that came to mind is, what if the property is equal distance between two facilities? Or how do you, there's two facilities I could be included in the formula. And how do you determine which facility would be the applicable one? I'm not going to pay both, that's for sure. So that needs to be answered.
We will get you that answer.
Okay. Let's see, there was one other thing. Can't remember what that was. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Evening, Council. Scott Miller, my address is on file. I have a couple of, like, 6 different questions. I understand we'll get these after the meeting. Is there a cost to have this project go to a vote? Is it going to go to a vote? Or is it going to be voted on here and then the assessment will take place after it's voted on in council?
It's going not to a ballot, but I know I said we would answer
well,
that.
It's kind of important to ask that question because
we will ask your question and we will give you your answers.
So, is there a cost to go out for that to go out to a vote? And if so, what is that cost? Mr. Strand, I heard you say you used the word average a lot, and then I saw numbers that didn't say average. So, is it a $49 average or is it $49?
It's a $49 equivalent benefit unit. It's $49.
So it's $49 and then, okay.
Then it goes down from there, yes.
Okay, got that. Thank you. And there was a question of how the funds guaranteed to be used for the pool, but that was covered in your notes with important points. What about the, I'm not sure I have this name right, the Hunsaker Pool Project? Does that affect this at all, any way, shape, or form? And if you're not familiar with that project, that's Councilman Hunsaker talked about putting a big pool in Ridgecrest. Does that affect this project in any way, shape, or form?
If the Economic Development Committee,
Well,
whoever is doing it, if they come up with the funding to build it, they can build it. I mean, right now, this is a public pool. They're looking at an aquatic center.
Where my concern comes in is we talked about is the the aquifer and having get another pool with 8 lanes. I think they're talking about over there. It's just something that came to mind. Something that came to mind while you were talking about that as a Hunsaker project.
Well, there's one thing to take into consideration there. The city's looking at $3 million to reopen Penny Pool, hopefully widen it, deepen it, put a therapy pool, get it ADA compliant. I do believe the Hunsaker project is $15 million.
Right, and that would not come out of Ridgecrest funds. That would be out of, I'm gonna say, Hunsaker funds, for lack of a better term.
It'd have to come from some sort of private entity, or if they chose to, they'd have to come back to the city and ask the city to float a bond for them, which would be considerably more than what we'd be asking for.
Fair enough.
And that is significantly different, and in addition to what we're doing.
Right, I understand. There's 2 different projects. I was just...
That was the IWVDCs.
Right.
Yeah, we're looking at $16.8 million to improve and repair all of our facilities. They would be looking at $15 million to put an aquatic center in.
Okay. And I don't know if this is even possible. It kind of goes to what Dave was just talking about. Is it a possibility of having I'm going to use the word, a voluntary assessment? Everybody gets assigned the assessment. However, for those people who may not ever use a park, have no interest in a park, could they opt out of that? I don't know if that's even an opportunity or not.
No.
That's a bummer. Just a thought. And last question, and the pool, and I'll be done. If I owned a pool company, could I walk up and say, hey, I'm going to rebuild the pool, and not get the city involved and go build a pool and say, here are the keys, and walk away?
Yes. If you involve no city funds whatsoever, then it would not be a prevailing wage project. Yeah, it'd have to be up to code.
Check out?
Ma'am?
We're ready.
Yeah, if you had an organization that wanted to spend $2 million without any city involvement, then yes, that'd be a good thing.
Technically, wouldn't the city have to be involved for just like permitting and stuff like that? So,
well,
the attorney just
it would make a difference because you'd have to pull permits out. That'd be part of the deal. You'd have to secure permits and have it inspected. It'd have to be done to code, an ADA requirement. So yes, if somebody came and wanted to take on the entire project, the permitting, the design, plan check through county or Wildan, sure.
Okay.
All day long.
And I'm summing up, so that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. I wasn't being facetious if I was asking if you wanted to write a check, because that is an opportunity some wise investor may want to say, count me in.
Not considering my questions.
Pardon me? Okay.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Lawson. I live at 801 West Ward. First, I'd like to point out that a large amount of the cities that you did your comparison to are rich cities such as Pasadena, Seal Beach, Paso Robles. Secondly, I like what Ms. Stevens says about less bidders and more about quality as previous things, because as a lot of us citizens can see, our roads that we just had done are already poop. Over 30 years, there have been need, but nothing was done. It's been known since 2011 the pool was in bad shape, but nothing's been done about upkeep. I like how he brought up about we need maintenance funding. Why is the commercial industry to benefit versus a single family when the families are the ones that need the parks? Is that to keep their costs down? And how much of, because as...
I didn't hear your last thing. Could you say that again?
Why is the commercial industrial a 2-point versus a single family 1 point on their graphs? And with all your graphing stuff, how much is going to be going to the actual Kerr-McGee Center versus the parks? Not including the Penny Pool, which you have a $3 million estimate as of 2011. That's it. Oh, wait, I think we need, as everyone has said before me, we need a lot more community input. I personally do have children, so I like parks and upkeep. I mean, the bathrooms are scary at Rocket Park, Leroy Jackson. Pearson Park, I live right around the corner from that. There is no restrooms for us to use, so unfortunately just go to the one across the street from now. I
can answer a couple of your questions. We did do a meeting one evening, a priorities meeting for the projects, I believe, April timeframe, April 2008. We did. 2018, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, that's worse.
Did I say 2008? Wow.
Yeah.
Back a long time ago. Sorry, 2018. We did invite the public. If it is passed, yes. That's one of the reasons why we have the proposed maintenance list, because as a requirement for the engineering report, we have to list the potential projects that we would be interested in doing. We didn't pre-select everything because we need public input. And we understand when we had it, we didn't have a whole lot of public input because it's sometimes difficult for people who want to come and spend a lot of time identifying what the needs are when there's no money there to spend on anything. So we do plan on having public input if it passes. Our two priorities are to reopen Penny Pool and take care of the senior center. And from there, we are going to have public input to figure out what the priorities are going to be. We just didn't want to make the assumption of what people wanted. And what if things change 2 years from now? And as for the 2 EBU for commercial versus 1 EBU, Stacy, if you can answer that for me, please.
That's based on the average single-family residential unit. So we did an average of all single-family residential in the city of Ridgecrest, and it came out to be about 0.5. So 1 acre for a commercial is that 0.5 times 2.
Earlier, you had mentioned something in regards to duplex versus doorknob. How many people are actually living in there? Was a duplex 1 unit, or is it?
Duplex is 2 units.
Okay.
But commercial is just, we looked at the acreage for all the single family, came up with the average. I'm sorry. We came up with an average, which was about 0.5. It might have been a little bit over 0.5. I think it was 0.55. And from that's how we came up with the 2 for commercial on a 1 acre property.
I realize we're answering some of these questions, and I don't want to ignore Ron and Dave's questions, so we will come back and answer those questions. If we are going to answer them now, then I want to make sure we go back to Ron and Dave's questions.
Unfortunately, there were so many questions that they just began to get answered.
Right.
Dave, I can answer your question now when it comes to being located equally between 2 parks. Well, the engineer report says that they choose the parcel location they determine the parcel location based upon the closest facility. So if they're both of equal distance, well, you're only going to get charged 1 EBU anyway, $49. So if you're within a half mile of, let's say, I don't know, Leroy Jackson Park and the senior center, if it was where you live at, it's exactly half mile apart, you're still going to only pay $49 a year if you're within that half mile of both facilities. And did we answer all of your other questions? The last lady that was up there. The cost of Kerr-McGee is $2.2 million, but we do have a breakout on that. That is also part of the priorities list. That if it passes, those will all be taken into consideration from the public on how much funding we have, what projects there are. Because each year we have to identify what projects we're going to do the following year.
Just to add to what you're saying, Mr. Strand, all the projects will be going before the list is created. Will be going to the Quality Life Committee, so the public will have adequate time to come to the meetings and give their input to the committee before it even reaches the council.
And when Mr. Porter steps back there, I got to apologize. We didn't answer his question. We didn't think we were, but the landscaping Lighting District Act of 1972 does allow park assessment districts as well as maintenance of districts for roads, as well as landscaping lighting districts. So although it says landscaping lighting district, it does allow other districts to be formed. I believe the cost for Wildan to mail out and process the 45-day ballot, I think, is like $3,000. I think was what in the contract, $3,000 or $4,000.
It was. Yeah.
We're not.
Correct.
And we're not going. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
if the
council approves the resolution tonight, they don't approve the assessment. All they do is authorize Wildan to move forward with a 45-day mail ballot. And what happens is there's 12,502 parcels within the city of Ridgecrest. So each one of those parcels will get a ballot, and they will have the opportunity to return that ballot in a self-addressed envelope within 45 days. And then if they approve it this evening, we'll have a public hearing on April 17th to count the ballots and then be able to conduct a protest hearing at that point in time.
Okay. Did that answer that question? Okay. You were asking that, Scott.
Just to be clear, Scott Miller, address on file. So that 45 days it would be mailed out. It would not be like a county special election. It would be a city special election.
It's a mail ballot. It's what they call
not an election. Sorry, it'd be a mail ballot, a city mailed ballot,
right,
counted by the city.
It would be counted by Wildan.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Wildan. We've contracted Wildan to count the ballots
and
for us.
And that's $4,500. That includes all the shipping, all the postage and everything like that. And that would be paid for by Wildan or by
it's
the city?
paid for by the city.
It's part of the whole contract.
Okay.
Yeah, it's part of the whole contract. Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
You're asking me. We have the contract that we signed in January of 2018, and it's now February of 2019. I know what the contract costs, but I don't have every line item memorized, and I didn't think I was going to have to answer those questions tonight.
Very well. Thank you.
I'm trying, yes.
Rob Gallagher, address is on file. Just a quick thank you to Mr. Strand and Mr. Patton for the information. I came with an open mind, had some questions, so there's a lot that's been given out and still a lot to digest, so thank you for that. I do want to make one small comment. It seems minor, but since every penny counts, I felt compelled to say it. There was mention of replacing tree or trees, so I would just encourage being smart about that with, of course, the water. If we would think about whether we would replace a tree if there's already artificial shade provided, those things considered. I live off of South Downs, so I have a lot of angst with the shrubberies that are down that way instead of decorative stone, boulder, or native art, because when they they consume water, and then when they get overgrown, they take manpower, which is sometimes voluntary manpower, and when they do overgrow, there's a real extreme safety hazard pulling out onto that boulevard there from those neighboring side streets. So that's it. But again, thank you for the information. A lot to think about.
Thank you, Bob.
Denise Kite, 340 East Javis Avenue. I had a couple of questions. There is no sunset clause. This assessment goes on forever. Is the assessment tied to CPI?
Yes, we do not have a sunset clause built into the park assessment. However, each year the city council determines what the assessment could be, and they could actually determine it could be zero.
Okay, when you say that each year they determine what the assessment could be, let's say this year it's 49, can they determine next year it's going to be 149?
Not without doing another Prop 218 hearing, not without doing another mail ballot. And yes, there is the possibility of doing a cost inflation up to 3.5% a year, but that is up to the city council to determine whether or not they do so or not.
So that's written in.
Correct.
That's 3.5 a year. Can be.
Up to 3.5.
Well, yeah, but how many
the reason why you want to put
say no?
The reason why you want to put a ability to increase on inflation, because in 20 years, I mean, it's no different than our cost allocation study for building and planning. We haven't updated our fees since 1994, and I believe the cost of living's gone up 70% since 94, right. and our right. Your purchasing power goes away over
right.
time.
But I think, as you and I have discussed before, I'm retired. I do have a great deal of property here in Ridgecrest, and this is going to really affect my yearly income. So,
I do know that I have rentals also, and I do know that I believe that most of our rent has doubled in the last 5 or 6 years.
It has gone up,
right.
And then some of it hasn't. I have elderly people that I haven't raised rent on in years, so I'm sure you have them also. I did have a question on mobile home parks. Are they going to be assessed per resident on a mobile home park where you have, 20 or 30 mobile homes?
I believe it was by commercial, but I would have to double check and get back to the city and let them know for sure.
Okay. Large apartment buildings where you have 20 units?
I believe that was also commercial, but I would have to verify.
Well, then why are you not considering a duplex commercial or a triplex commercial? What's the criteria?
Generally, residential, anything residential is generally multifamily, duplexes, they're considered residential. Even if you look at a county land use classifications for apartments, they're generally owned by maybe a corporation, so they can be considered commercial. So we don't usually take residential as a commercial unit. I understand what you can treat apartments as residential or commercial, but we generally treat apartments as commercial. But I do need to look at the information. I don't remember at the top of my head how I treat apartments. So I would have to verify that before I don't want to give you like I'm 100% positive that's what happened. I need to look at the database.
Okay, and you'll be here when this is over with to look at that? Okay, thank you.
We will get back to you, Denise, for sure. Thank you.
I'm Pat Ferris. My address is up on Highway 14, but I do have some serious investments in the city of Ridgecrest. You're partially answered. I was going to ask about apartments. And there are some major, ready to be launched, some projects. One is a 96-unit apartment building, and that's the first phase because there's a push to try to meet the demands that China Lake is looking for to provide housing for young professionals. And so and this the fees keep being increased, and so you keep saying, oh, when does this stop? And so what if the difference in commercial, now we're looking at a first unit of 96 apartments, which would, at $49 a door, would end up being about $5,000, about $50,000 a year, $47,000, something like that. So when you say if it's treated as commercial, how does that differ?
It's by acre.
Oh, by the acre?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pat.
Suzette Caulfield, Economic Development Specialist for Kern County. I am here to, I made notes this time. I am one of 3 Kern County Economic Development Specialists in East Kern County. I'm proud to represent the Ridgecrest Indian Wells Valley region. One of the documents that I use to focus on specific programs and projects to benefit our region is the Economic Development Strategic Plan for the City of Ridgecrest, which is dated June 2017. Within this document, there are 9 initiatives that are provided for our community as guidance in our economic development efforts during the next several years. They include 9 initiatives. The first one is NAS China Lake. Then it's dealing with our business retention and expansion, looking at recruiting new businesses, retaining our talent and attracting new talent to the area, working with Saracoso, small business development, site infrastructure, tourism and visitor attraction, and organizational alignment. There's 2 of these initiatives that I think are important for tonight's discussion. One is Initiative 1, which has to do with NAS China Lake. And I'm going to read directly from the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Any serious economic development planning efforts in Ridgecrest should start with the acknowledgement that the local economy could not function in its current level without NAS China Lake. The military installation has provided a strong foundation for thousands of families to live and prosper in the Ridgecrest area for decades. The military by no means is the only source of economic activity in Ridgecrest, but is by far the most important. The community must place a high priority on continuing to support the success of NAS China Lake. This should include stronger community and Navy partnerships, more workforce training partnerships between Saracoso and NAS China Lake, and a greater emphasis on encouraging small business development associated with the military and the contracting opportunities. The part that I wanted to get to is initiative number 4, talent retention and attraction. Again, I'm reading from the Economic Development Strategic Plan. Access to a skilled workforce is a critical factor affecting the success of business in today's economy. Communities that can attract and retain skilled workers have a competitive advantage in today's economy. Ridgecrest is fortunate to have NAS China Lake, a large, relatively stable employer that provides thousands of high-wage professional jobs for local residents. However, China Lake is in a constant battle for talent at the regional, state, and national levels. The high level of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math expertise demanded by China Lake on a yearly basis cannot be satisfied by homegrown talent alone. The installation relies on large numbers of out-of-region and out-of-state workers to be recruited into the Ridgecrest to live and work. The greater Ridgecrest community must acknowledge that these realities and the work to provide an attractive environment which appeals to existing and potential skilled workers considering employment at China Lake and other area employers. It will be especially important for the community to attract and retain young, highly educated workers to live and work in Ridgecrest. The strategies under this talent retention and attraction initiative includes Sierra Sands working with STEM programs, which they're doing, launching a Ridgecrest Civic Leadership Program. The Chamber has Leadership Ridgecrest. Establishing a community-wide young professional group to encourage collaboration, networking, and relationship building among the area's youth. The Chamber has a young professional network. There's also on here exploring ways to align military veterans with local employers. This is something that various organizations in the community are working on. The most important is encourage citywide investment in amenities and recreational infrastructures, which include parks, playgrounds, splash pads, trails, dog runs, that will enhance the Ridgecrest appeal and where they live. I feel that this program is going to provide a lot of benefit to our community, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Suzette.
Good evening, Council. Mike Neal. I have to admit, I've come up here a little saddened to have to watch Mr. Porter be refused to have an answer to one single question and immediately watch a citizen have a conversational question and answer period to the tune of 6 questions right in a row. I hope we can do better than that in the future. He's not here because he left out of disgust. I remind you that he has a wife with MS that requires almost constant care, and he comes up here out of civic duty. To be treated like that, I think, is unacceptable. Now to the issue at hand. Let's talk about the taxes we've had put on us in the past and how they've been used. The sewer assessment of about 5 years ago was protested by myself, Mr. Ritor, and former council member Jerry Taylor as being too much, not needed at the time. It was passed anyway, and in fact I asked that the council consider reducing it since it is such a high sewer assessment tax that we're going to have all the cash we need in the bank 40 years from now to pay right straight out cash for another facility when that time comes around. We don't need to be paying that much, but we are. Measure V was put on us and said, okay, trust us, we're going to spend it on roads mostly and then on police. Well, you see how that came around when I believe Mr. Morgan can correct me if I'm wrong. He left the Measure V committee in protest because it was being misspent. So they were being taxed and the money's being misspent. So, gee, tax us some more? Sure, that sounds like a good idea. Now, how about this whole process, which has already been mentioned before? But this whole idea was initiated solely, from what I could tell, on the city manager's part, without a single discussion in council, who are supposed to be the legislators and the distributors of our tax monies to the bureaucracy to do the job you're supposed to be doing. But we have not had one single discussion about the big long list of wants and needs that have been put up here before. City manager and staff have gone around the city politicking to get this put forward before the civic group's eyes all over town. I'm personally aware that at least he, Mr. Patton, and your economic development, brand new staffer have been to meetings. Who knows how much of the time that we're paying for them to do the job for us they spent propagandizing this thing, but they have. Yet still no discussions until tonight when you're supposed to vote to say to put this forward so we can have a Prop 218 mail-in ballot, which rarely gets much response from the public, as we all well know. Okay? Now, as far as the list and the wants and the needs, I'm just going to say straight out, I believe it to be highly inflated. I know for a fact very little of it has changed from about 4 to 5 months ago, whenever it was initially put together, maybe longer. When I protested at all the costs being extremely high, and I was told by Mr. Strand, "Oh, well, we don't have any cost estimates, but just trust us. We know what it trusts." Well, let me just show you a few examples, and let's talk about upgrade facility lights to LED to improve visibility. Kerr-McGee Youth Sports Complex, $1.4 million to change the lights to LED lights. I was told, we had to replace the whole pole and the light head. I'm sorry, I don't believe that. So I don't believe $1.4 million is anything but way more than it ought to be. You have 2 examples just exactly like this in this list. You have no more that I can talk about because I'm sure I won't be given more than 5 minutes here. So let me just tell you, we've already been told that the pool can be financed for about $170,000+ a year. That ought to be really easy to find. Let me also remind you, and you should know this, if you don't, I've written to council and delineated this. We've been told by finance department that our income to the city, the revenues are going to go up $500,000 every year for the next 4 years at least. And the claims about, but our PERS cost is high. Well, we just deleted that problem by refinancing it. So why in heaven's name are we talking about taxing people? This tax, once it gets on, the property tax will never go away. At the very least, it'll go up for more excuses, more reasons, whatever, when we are going to have more money coming in to the city than what we're talking about here tonight, the $600,000. So we don't need this tax, and I fail to understand why it's still being pursued.
Thank you, sir. Staff, can we keep those questions, or do you want to wait until after Mr.
I don't know if there was any questions in that. They were mainly statements.
There was a couple of statements why we're pursuing it, and I'd like to be able to have us address that.
Well, we're pursuing it because we have no stable revenue stream to be able to make the improvements in our parks. And I'm unfamiliar with this $500,000 a year you're referring to, that our general fund's going to grow, because that's not the case. So, we have no funding to take care of this, and this is the methodology to do it. So that's the answer to your question.
Wait 1 minute.
Mr. Strand, were you not in the Finance Committee meeting when I talked about the Finance Department projecting those increased revenues to the city? Did you not hear those numbers?
I do not recall hearing those numbers.
Okay, well, I'm not lying to people here, okay? I don't make these things up just to try to push a point. And you quit smirking at me, Mr. Patton. I don't appreciate that. I've had it with that. So get it off your face. See what you do when you do that?
I think he's smiling, sir. I don't think he's smirking.
Yeah, I know he's been smirking at me since I came up here.
But whatever.
So those numbers were put forward. You were there.
Mr. Neal, we're going to be putting our budget. We're going to be putting our budget together, and I don't know where you're getting these numbers?
Oh, I'm sure you don't now, but it was shown in graphs to everybody at the Finance Committee meeting probably 6 months ago or more, before all this started.
I'm not accusing you of lying. I'm just saying I don't recall that happening.
Okay, Mr. Morgan?
Stephen Morgan, 729 North Union Street. I'd like to applaud the City Council for listening to the public. A lot of folks over a lot of years have watched the deterioration of our parks and recreation facilities, and you are tonight possibly going to vote to put this out to ballot. That is all you are doing. And then after that is done, then if I'm not mistaken, you are not allowed to discuss it, you or the staff, at any point from then on. So presentations by the staff, if I'm not mistaken, prior to this vote were appropriate, because you will be unable to discuss it after, which my question is, one question is, how are you going to have forums, so to speak, so that the public can fully understand the EBU and how it works? There are things in this that I know tonight have confused people, and they're going to need to understand it to be able to make a rational vote up or down. So I hope that you're able to have Wildan do that. I honestly, I don't remember. But I know that you're not going to be able to do anything once you vote on this. You're not going to be able to go out and talk to groups. You're not going to be able to go out.
Mr. Morgan, we can.
We can
inform. We can inform. We can't advocate.
We can't advocate.
Right.
That's the difference.
When we were educating the community on Measure L and Measure V, we were making public presentations up till a couple of days before the election, after the council voted to put it on the ballot. The only thing I can't do is say you need to vote for it, or I can't use language that is so inflammatory that it's saying the same thing. So I can, if somebody asks, well, how do you determine what the EBU is, I can answer that question, and we are more than willing, and we are going to do that. Okay. So we do have a FAQ that we have. It's on the city webpage that answers about 10 of the frequently asked questions that the community has on this, where they can go there and take a look at that initially, and we can answer whatever else comes up.
I would ask that the council consider having Wildan and an actual time frame where we could be advertised and people can come in and ask their specific questions again, in addition to, that way the information gets out correctly. Another question that I have for you is, this is a living document, and no decision has been made on these projects. You needed to put a project list together to be able to go to do this process. You've made it very clear that if passed, committee meetings and public forums shall be held to actually put a true list. And at that point, if I am not mistaken, my question would be, then you have to go out to bid on those specific things to see how much money you actually have. Is that correct?
Most of the items are going to be public work prevailing wage projects that have to be put out to bid. Some we can get off a state contract, so we don't have to go through the bid process, but it'll obviously go through the process of the community and the council to vet these projects out. Yes, certainly.
I'll just conclude again by reiterating, I applaud you council members, for putting this on the ballot or to a vote to the public. This has been a long time coming. From Bill Bursey through Jim Ponick, districts have been discussed for Parks and Rec for decades, and it hasn't been done. You've stepped forward. I applaud you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Others?
Charles Ruler, 2125L Hogar. First, I got a couple just comments generically. I think the scope is so broad, nobody could, even fathom what this is. I mean, obviously, everybody in this room knows we need a pool, so that's not the question. How we get there is the important part. But limiting the scope, to put up $16.9 million worth of projects and put like painting a wall up, if you really, the text I've heard up here may at least been city center, the senior center and the pool. If that's truly your intentions, really close the scope down so you're not financing something for 30 years. Come up with a fix, with a reasonable estimate, not necessarily a certified bid, what the cost is going to be for these two, and put it out there where people can actually know what they're voting on. Because there's no clear definition of the projects.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
There's no clear definition of the projects. So I think limiting the scope and having a clear definition of the projects would definitely help the cause. One thing, this is obviously my pet peeve, but thanks to Mr. Morgan making me aware of this again too, the trust me factor surely goes down when you take $60K of Measure B and spend it on transportation and then try to make up reasons why you did it. Let's go on the public record that you guys approved $60K of Measure B money for the transit department to make up the fees liability. So that's, when you say trust me, everybody knows what you did there. That's a fact. So you might want to consider that in the future when you're asking people to trust me. The other comment I have is prevailing wage. I always hear that from like Mr. Morgan, Mr. Cordell, a lot of people. They're trying to help this pool go through. They're looking for a way to make it happen. I checked today. I tried to get some data from the city. I think I got some, but the city has had work done for the city of Ridgecrest with no prevailing wage, had product and services given to the city. You can go look at it. It's a Gold Canyon, maybe 2,000 feet of pavement that was put down for the city of Ridgecrest with no estimate, no prevailing wage. And that's a question I've been talking with, one of the council persons and haven't got an answer yet. So prevailing wage is relevant there at the pool. Why is it not relevant at another project? So I know you can answer these questions when I get done and discuss if you'd like to. So the prevailing wage. Now the big thing I have is the unimproved property. This is to Wildan. So if someone owns property for 100 years that's undeveloped in the city of Ridgecrest, they will have to pay, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So every single piece of parcel in the Ridgecrest that's not developed for 100 years will be paying on this, correct?
Yes, if it's vacant land, that can be developed on.
Okay, then undeveloped commercial will be paid at a 2x rate, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I want. So if this is supposed to be a use fee, how can 50 acres of commercial property be billed? That could be a question I'd like to ask of Wildan. If there's a 20-acre parcel inside the city of Ridgecrest, commercial property, what's that going to cost that particular developer, commercial property person? Take examples right here on China Lake Boulevard.
It depends on its radius to a park.
Pardon me?
It depends on the radius to the park.
Right. Okay, the radius to the park. Just take the property right across here. There's a 10-acre parcel. What would be the cost on a 10-acre parcel of commercial property for 100 years?
It would be, let's see here, vacant lot.
No, 10-acre parcel commercial, not a vacant lot. 10-acre parcel commercial.
Yeah. Close to a park, 10 times 2, 20. Yeah.
For 10 acres? That's at the that's the 2x rate?
No, you're talking, you said vacant land.
No, I said commercial property. Yeah.
Commercial would be
10 times 2, 20.
So $500 a year times 100 years would be $500,000. Is that correct? So if someone has 10 acres of property in the city of Ridgecrest, over the next year, 100 years, that's going to cost them $500,000 if they do nothing to it.
Well, that's dependent. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, excuse me. No, you can probably. Is that a correct statement? Yes or no?
It's not.
Well, it's simple. You said
You're talking about commercial or you're talking about vacant?
commercial. 10 acres of commercial. You just told me 10 acres of commercial. Yes, commercial. Yeah, that's right across the street, right here, right by a park. So that's a correct statement. 500,000. That was your number.
I get 50,000. I don't know.
Oh, 50? Okay, 50. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me get back to my things. I don't want to get the red light here. The questions I also wanted to do is, how does this vote work? This vote, is it a 50% requirement of all the ballots sent out? Is it 50% yes, or is that default? If you don't reply, it's a yes.
It's the ballots that are received. So we only count the ballots that are received.
So you could have 5% of the population approve this?
Yes.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that people understand that this is not a real vote where they're going out, they're going to send the ballot out. Now, it
is a real vote because you have the opportunity to choose to or not to. That is a vote. That is your
Is it-
choice.
right,
Just
is it-
like
is it-
in a ballot. You may choose to go and, I'm going to answer this. You may choose to go and vote, or you may choose not to go and vote.
Right.
But that's what it is sent out to you for, so you may respond.
Right. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's a fair question. And then main thing is that when I said about the scope, to be not to push it out to 30 years would be good. And and then the unimproved. I got this. So I'm very good. That's all my question. That's my comments. Thank you.
Okay.
I can answer a few of those.
I want to address one too. Go
You
ahead.
asked for Gold Canyon. If a vendor went ahead and resurfaced that roadway without any sort of city funds, it's not a prevailing wage project. It's no different than the scenario we're talking about if Mr. Cordell had $2 million and didn't involve the city, and it wouldn't be a prevailing wage project. It would only be a prevailing wage project out there if the city paid for the material that the company then laid on the ground, but they didn't charge labor.
So any business can come into the city of Ridgecrest, and reacting to your comment. So I could, if I chose to, come in and, without talking to the city, because I've emailed the city engineer that they didn't know this was going on or didn't approve it. Who approves that? If I want to pave...
Well, Marty, that's not the point.
No, but it
That's
is
not
the
the point of your question. I don't know if they had permission or not, but the point is that they put it on there for free. So it's not a prevailing wage project.
So prevailing wage projects do not have to be... That's a good question I'd like to ask to the city attorney. Can we have city property have work done without a prevailing wage on it?
If it's a public works project, it's going to be prevailing wage. The situation that I am hearing everyone describing is when it doesn't cost anything to the city. So then the city isn't hiring it, isn't paying for it.
So anybody could come give the city in-kind value that doesn't have to be at prevailing wage. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Your next answer to your question is scope of project. I can take you to any of our facilities and identify anything on this list and show you where it needs to be improved and how we'd improve it. So when you talk about scope, you're inferring that everything on here is vague. And I disagree wholeheartedly that what you're saying is vague, that what we're saying is vague. We have carpets in the rooms. They're old. We can replace those carpets. That's not vague. Window coverings, mini blinds, replacing the heating and air conditioning units. Yes, we have a long list, but we have a long list of things that have been in disrepair for a long time that we want to fix. So I think the scope is right. Do I have $1 million a year coming in to fix these things really quick? No, that's why we have to prioritize it. And then reasonable effort for quotes, we did make a reasonable effort. We did get with contractors. We did consult with HLA Group, which that's all they do for a living. If you go online, they design parks and they build parks. So they have a little bit of an idea. It's no different than your son giving me a good idea what it's going to cost to build a home. That's what he does for a living.
Correct.
So I say that that's reasonable when I deal with an expert, and I rely upon that expert's judgment. Now, are they going to be 100%? Well, no. We have a lot of public work projects that go out to bid, and we have engineer estimates. They come back wildly different. Like we're referring to the Ridgecrest Boulevard sidewalk replacement. Okay, that's a great example of how sometimes you think the projects are going to be lower, and they come in quite higher. It's no different than Down Street. Came in high, we put it out to bid, came back in low. So you don't know. TDA, yes, that was approved. Yes, that was Measure V funding. The Measure V committee deemed that expenditure was appropriate. The covering the fare box ratio allowed the city access to additional excess transit funds that they could use towards roads. It was a judgment call. We haven't done it since. It wasn't budgeted in FY18. It wasn't budgeted this year. But in my opinion, that was an appropriate expenditure because it allowed us more money for roads. So I think I've answered your questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear up. When I was talking about limited scope, I wasn't talking about carpet. I was talking about, instead of having 30 items, maybe consolidate it down to 5 or 6 items so that you could have if you're trying to get public support, which Ron, again, most of what we've heard about here besides Ron's list is the pool. That's what's driving this. So it seemed like, it'd be very important for you as a city.
Well, I think that the people who have their children play football, soccer, and baseball, and softball, and volleyball, and basketball may want to have a say in what we do with the facilities. And why limit it just to one or two people if we're doing an assessment district? Why limit our choices of what we're going to improve to narrow the scope?
It was just a suggestion. I mean, you guys obviously have to make it. That was just a suggestion. So, okay. Thank you much.
I want to say one thing, too. You brought up the ability of trust. Mm-hmm. The $60,000 you're referring to from Measure V got us $500,000 for roads from KernCog. I think that's a wise investment.
Okay, could we use general funds and still got the $575,000?
It was for roads.
Okay, but could we have used the general fund and still got the $575,000, Mayor?
We got the money for roads.
Yes, we could have used general fund, but the decision by council at the time was to use Measure V.
Right, I understand that. And then we've had this discussion in different meetings.
And during our last budget, the council elected not to use Measure V funding to cover any sort of fare box ratio deficiencies in the future.
Once that was uncovered, the council made a decision to not do that again. Before, I don't believe the councils were fully aware that that had been done.
Well, we knew that $60,000 designated for roads was going to get us $500,000 for roads. To me, that is a reasonable, fair, logical investment.
Well,
I totally agree. If it wasn't for transit, if it was just used for general fund, I think that's an excellent investment. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So I have a comment on that too, Chuck. I think it's a valid point that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think it's a valid point that you bring up about Measure V because it is the trust issue. But I think the council's kind of explained it in the sense that it was addressed and looked at and acted on, because I personally brought it up prior to becoming on city council. I didn't vote for that for that action to happen, but because it was appeared questionable to it. So I think it's valid that you bring up something like that when we're asking for money from people for basically a tax. So I think we should be ironclad on that.
No, that's why I'm not questioning the ability of the city to vote on it. I'm just basically going to the context. And obviously, there's not one word in Measure V, which I've discussed with other people. The word transit does not show up anywhere in the text of Measure V. Not one line, not one word. We've gone through it. I've had this discussion with public officials. So I agree with you. The city could do whatever they want. They could take $500,000 Measure V tomorrow. In fact, they could take Measure V money and build a swimming pool.
No, we can't.
No.
No, we can't.
No.
According to Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, Ron. Ron told me in the Measure V committee that the city of Ridgecrest could take that money and use it for whatever they wanted to. Is that correct, Ron?
That was a little hyperbole. It was answering a question that was posed in such a way by you that yes, it is a general fund revenue. However, the city has promised to use it on police and roads. And that is the reason why we have the Measure V committee. That is the reason why the Measure V committee exists is to look at the expenditures and question the expenditures, and they did so.
Right,
and based upon that questioning of the expenditure, the council decided not to do that again.
I agree. The council has the authority to do it, but I just wanted to make clear
So the Measure V committee actually is working because they looked at that, they questioned it, and it came back to council during a presentation, and they made their decision not to do that in the future.
Yeah, but no problem. I just wanted to.
We're totally off the subject.
Yeah, well, no, I just wanted to.
You use more than
we are.
Oh, I do. I know.
About the trust.
Very good, Mike. Just pretend like I'm Ron, okay?
I'm sorry. It was on 10-15 minutes.
Yeah.
Stan Rotora. Good evening. I've got a couple questions before I make my comments. So if you want to answer them, fine. Is the school district going to be using the penny pool at all for any type of their educational classes or their sports stuff?
Mr. Pat, you want to answer that?
I would imagine so. At the time of the closure, they were using it. So I would imagine currently they're using.
I'm sorry. Can you get closer to your?
I don't know if is that better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
When the pool closed, they were using it for their swim team, yes, and they're currently using the base pool. So I would imagine that they'll come back to using penny pool when it reopens, when and if it reopens, yes.
Have we talked to the school about helping support the cost of rebuilding penny pool?
That should be part of the discussion. I don't know. I can't answer whether we have or not. I'm
In the
saying
past,
it should be part of the discussion.
In the past, discussion has happened, and they were not interested in participating.
I think that the school district's also struggling to find matching money at this point in time for the refurbishment of Richmond School. So we haven't specifically asked, but I do know that they are very concerned about, having matching funds for that grant. So I don't know how willing they'd be willing to come in and put $1 million into it.
Yeah. Well, I think they should be concerned. Where I grew up, every high school had their own swimming pool. They don't have a swimming pool. So it ought to be an avenue, I think, that ought to be at least addressed. I listened to the conversation about the multifamily costs, and I just got confused. There was one line for a single-family dwelling and then a duplex, I believe, but there was nothing about a triplex or a quadplex or anything else. And I own a triplex that's on less than a quarter acre of land. So if it is commercial, obviously the price is different than if it is addressed as 3 units or 3 doors or 3 doorknobs or whatever. And I didn't see anything from the listing that was shown in what was put out in the packet of how anybody could. And there's a lot of 4plexes, 8plexes, that type of thing. And I didn't see where that was addressed at all in the schedule that was put out in the data package. And I think that really needs to be cleared up because it amounts to a lot of difference in terms of money. That's a comment. I guess there's really nothing to answer there, although eventually you're going to have to answer it because you got to send out these ballots, right? And the dollars have to be on that document or
Mr. Rattore, I do believe it is per doorknob. In looking at the assessments, if you get a hold of me tomorrow, I can tell you what the assessment would be because I have the Excel spreadsheet. But I do believe it's per doorknob.
Yeah, well, I think all the public should actually know. I am curious.
We'll make sure that gets out on the FAQ, but I'm almost positive it's per doorknob. That if you have an 8plex, it's 8 units.
The Prop 218 analysis is supposed to provide specific benefit to each individual area, parcel, whatever. At the last time we had a meeting like this, I brought up the fact that they were using, and it was stated again tonight, the rate is based upon the distance or the radius to the closest facility. I guess that's one way of doing it. On the other hand, there are locations in town that are close to 4 or 5 facilities, and they're paying the same as people who are close to 1 facility. And it seems to me that in terms of specific benefit, if I'm living close to 4 or 5 facilities, I have more specific benefit than a person who lives close to 1 facility. So I don't see how we can say that we're going to use close to just 1 facility as the criteria for setting the cost. It doesn't make sense to me, but so be it. 3 years ago, we actually, the council was talking about setting a meeting, a workshop, that the city would go over its goals and objectives. And that was 3 years ago. And that meeting never occurred. Now it appears like we have preempted that meeting and we are going forward with something that are clearly goals and objectives without looking at prioritizing a lot of other potential goals and objectives. And my feeling is we really ought to look at all goals and objectives. And my recommendation to you is to go back, regroup, have some workshop, town hall meetings, or whatever, so we can really identify all the goals, all the objectives, and do it at once rather than doing it piecemeal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Paul Wheeler. I'm retired Ridgecrest Police. I'm also a citizen, a Ridgecrest resident. And I want to thank the council for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I have been defending this assessment district on social media for the last week or so. I want to applaud you all for taking a vote tonight. I'm hoping that you'll all vote to put this to a vote on to the community. Some of the things that I've been hearing online is that I won't use any of this, or we don't want new taxes, but I want to remind people that Ridgecrest is a full-service community and always has been, and it always should be. Our Parks and Recreation Department is so important to us. I wanted to thank Mr. Morgan for bringing some clarity to the estimates issue, and the council for bringing some clarity to the trust issue that was raised. I think it's quite simple. All you have to do is look to where the benefit fell, and the benefit fell to the streets improvements, and so I don't think that there's any trust issue there. All that expenditure fell within the purview of Measure V, so there's no problem there. I think that the folks that were in opposition to the casino should be very happy with this assessment district. It gives people a place to congregate in a nice park and enjoy the wonderful Ridgecrest weather that hasn't been so wonderful today, but normally we have some great sunshine and heat. So I want to thank you, and I hope that you all vote to send this to a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any other public comment? You all came. I would think there's no other public comment. Okay, can we answer some of the questions that we're not able to answer in the beginning because I said we were going to answer them at the end?
I believe the only question that we didn't answer was Mr. Porter's, and I answered it after he left the room. And that was the fact that the landscape and lighting district does include park districts in the law.
We also didn't answer Mr. Torres' question about the proximity to multiple parks versus if you're just close to one park.
It's based on the closest, right?
Yes, it's based on the closest.
You can't charge my house 4 charges because I'm in the middle of a bunch of them. So it's one charge based on the closest.
I just wanted to clarify that.
Otherwise, you could get this thing as complicated as possible. I get it.
Yeah, it's like commercial property or even undeveloped parcels. The assessment stops at 10 acres. So if you have 100 acres, you're only going to be charged up to 10. So it protects people who have large swaths of land from paying a larger assessment because it is vacant.
I've got a few.
Go ahead. There is no other public comment, right? Okay, go ahead, please.
I'm like Stan. I'm a little confused on the apartments because you said some of them are considered commercial.
I have to look at the database. I believe I made them all commercial for apartments. For duplex, triplexes, I used that as a residential property, which then it would be by unit. So a triplex would be 3, and a duplex would be 2.
Okay, what about and I don't know how many apartments are on Down Street on the east side, but I assume there's 30 or 40 units there. So that'd be considered a commercial?
I have to verify. I have my database now, so I can verify.
Because that would affect my vote, and I'll tell you why. What you're saying, if that's considered commercial based on acreage, then they're going to pay the same amount as I'm going to pay for my store, and all the people that work in my store
are going to pay this on their homes, but 40 people are going to pay, they're going to get a 2 times assessment on commercial.
My guess would be, and again, we'd have to go back and verify through the data, but anything over 4 units is probably going to be assessed as commercial because the county rolls don't keep track of how many units are in apartment complexes. Some have them, some don't. So there's no way to go through and verify every single multifamily residential in the city and how many units there are. So we use units, residential units, for the things that the county does identify by land use code. So anything, duplexes, triplexes, and quads, they identify by land use. Beyond that, they don't, it's just multifamily residential. So you have no idea if a parcel has 5 units or it has 50 units unless it's on the roll, but the assessor doesn't always put it there. So the prudent thing to do is to treat those kind of properties where we don't know the number of residential units as commercial properties. So you're looking at probably only up to 4 units being assessed on a unit basis. Everything else is going to be based on its acreage.
Can you explain that again? Because I'm not sure
Well,
I
understand it perfectly now. So what you're basically telling me is that I'm going to pay for my store, I'm going to pay $98, 2 times 49, because I'm within a half mile of the baseball fields. And the apartment complex across the street from the ball fields are going to pay, that's probably 2 acres, so they're going to pay $196.
Correct.
So they're going to pay just double mine, and they've got 40 people, 40 families living in that apartment, and I have none living in mine.
We got to be careful here. Remember, these are assessments, and they are, by law, they are assessments against the property, not against the residents. Land use has a value in determining special benefit, but it's the benefit to property, not to people. People is a part of it, but not the entire amount. So the fact that you have residential properties that have, let me take a step back here. Let's say we have a 10-acre apartment complex, 500 units. Is it reasonable to charge a 500 benefit units times $50?
No, I don't think that's reasonable either.
Right. So,
but it's also
at some point, you have to make a analytical decision in terms of what land use dictates how many units you assign based on that. But you've got to remember the benefit is also based on proximity. So you have to take both into consideration. Is it totally 100% fair to everybody? Going back to the same question that was asked before. Well, your business happens to be next to 4 parks. The guy down the street, 2 miles down the road, he's only near 1 park. It has nothing to do with how many parks you're close to. It's whether you're close to any park facility that we plan on spending money on to maintain. So it's an all-in or all-out type thing. Does that make any sense? I mean, again,
I understand what you're saying.
I mean, you can make this thing overly complicated to where when we go out to ballot, no one's going to understand it. So you have to draw lines and there's a balance between what administratively makes sense and what's totally perfectly ideal. Every single property you measure, oh, this one's 150 feet from a park, this one's 300. You can't go there. There has to be a reasonable estimation of what their proportional special benefit is and making it equitable over the whole city.
I understand what you're saying, but a 40-unit apartment complex is going to get a lot more benefit from a park than my business that has 10 employees.
The residents might, but then that 40-unit apartment complex may have their own swimming pool.
Well, that's true too.
And you don't. So how is their benefit better for the pool? There's too many factors to look at it that way. You can't break it down to the minutia. You have to look at properties and what you can measure. And this methodology takes into consideration, which most methodologies don't, both proximity and land use of the properties. Is it 100%? No methodology is going to be 100%, but you try to get it as close as you can and within a reasonable estimation of what each property's special benefit is.
Can I tack on one quick additional question since you're talking about the subject? why don't you do it based off of the cost of the property, the price, property
That's
value?
illegal.
Okay, I just wanted to, I had someone
Yeah,
ask
answer
me,
to that.
I just
Yeah.
had someone ask me that question,
That's
so
a good-
I
good
wanted,
point.
You can,
yeah.
if we were doing a tax, yeah, I could base it off assessed value,
Okay.
but we're not doing a tax. We're doing an assessment.
Okay, next question I guess also applies to you then. I had a constituent text me, the mail-in ballots, are they prepaid postage or does the property owner pay the postage and send it back in?
Well, if you want to pay the extra dime to have prepaid postage to have them mail it back, yes.
No, I'm just asking the question.
No, they're not.
They're not,
We put
okay.
where they can put a stamp, because they can hand deliver it. They don't have to mail it.
That's
They can
true.
bring the ballot in.
Like I say, a constituent texted me, and
Right.
so I thought I asked that. Okay, and the one point I would like to make is there's been a lot of comments about how valid these figures are. Each big project is going to come before the council and get voted on and put out to bid. So we have another look at every one of these projects, except for the little teeny ones. I don't think $11,000 for mini blinds is going to come to the council, but most of these projects here are going to come to the council, are going to go out to bid, and people are going to be able to come in and comment about them as each one of these comes up. I think that's an important message for people to understand.
Right. Now, again, the public will have an opportunity to weigh in through committee. It'll go through the committee before it even gets to council, so they'll have plenty of opportunity.
So that's all my comments.
Scott, did you have any more?
Well, just a brief touch back on that 11,000. Is there a minimum threshold on the amount that here? 25,000? Okay. So anything under 25,000 can fly under the window or
Yeah,
goes
it's
through
got-
lawn? Doesn't have to go to council?
City
I'm just
manager has
wondering.
authority.
30,000.
30,000.
30,000, but certain public work projects, I believe, have to go to council.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it's 25. Yeah. 25. Yeah, but even though, again, that list will be prioritized by the council and but through the committee, so we wouldn't be doing that anyway without approval.
Good. That's kind of where I was heading with it, so I appreciate you.
It doesn't have to go out to bid, but it still has to be approved as part of the budget from the council.
Right.
Right.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Lindsay, did you have any more?
I just wanted to add in one thing because some concerns were stated about lower income people, and Jessica DeHaan, my planning commissioner, who also sits on the Quality of Life Committee, she had concerns about if this would affect people who are on fixed incomes, lower incomes. So she went to the La Mirage neighborhood and one other neighborhood and talked to over 20 people about their thoughts on the $49 assessment and how that would impact them. And she said she did not come across a single person that said that they wouldn't be willing and could not handle paying $49 a year for the parks facilities. So I just wanted to add that in because I thought that was useful when we were talking about it at the committee to know that, and that she actually went out because we did have that public meeting, but we didn't have a whole crowd of people, so she wanted to go in and talk to those fixed income people and talk to them. And
Okay.
so I thought that was good information.
I'd like to make is that the end of yours?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a couple of, I'm sorry. I thought you were up there as public. I was going to say, not now. Okay, sorry. I'd like to make a couple of comments. This has been a very long time coming. I've been on council for 4 years, and it seems to me that as a homeowner, the first thing I would want to do if I was a homeowner to invest in my home and keep the maintenance up on it, because in the long run I benefit by taking care of my home, my business, my whatever. And as a city, we have not done that. And as Steve and other people have referred to, and our staff, 30 years of not doing the maintenance because we didn't have the money. The reason why we didn't have the money has clearly been defined, but what it comes to is our responsibility to the city. We must take care of what we have to do, the responsibility of taking care of our buildings, our products, and everything we do comes back to the quality of life and maintaining the people and offering them the businesses, both the hospital, the school, and the Navy. We want to keep their people here. And if we can't take care of our services and provide for it financially, we can say, well, it's because you didn't do this, or you couldn't pay that, or you weren't required to pay that. It comes down to that they provide a huge benefit, both the school, the Navy, and the hospital to us, and to ignore the benefits of them and to say we don't have that responsibility to take care of it, I think is a very short-sighted. And we have been short-sighted because we didn't have the money, and we're finding a way that we must take care of ourselves, because the state is not going to come, as staff referred to. The feds aren't going to come and say, you're good people, here's this money. We have to do it. It's our responsibility. It is nobody else's responsibility but us to take care of our community as we must. So I know where I'm going to go. Wallace, I didn't give you the opportunity to speak. Would you care to?
Well, a quick follow-up on what Lindsay was saying, talking about querying some of the underprivileged areas and seeing if money's a thing. I think one of the things that's very nice about swimming pools that they don't really know any class. I think that whether you're a poor kid or a middle-class kid or a rich kid, you need a pool. I was a middle-class kid, and my daddy didn't have a pool. He wasn't into that, didn't want to take care of that, whatever. Well, I guess we could afford one. We didn't have one. In fact, nobody in my family had a pool. So we had to go to a distant relative, and his place was packed all the time, and we had a ton of fun over there. We went to a boys' camp and 3 public pools. So, and I was middle class, but, we were okay. But, so pools don't know any class, really. And I think that also it's very important. Nobody's talked about this, but kids got to learn to swim. How about that one? Because that's a safety thing. And the first parent brings the kids out on a fishing trip, and one of the kids fall out of the boat. Everybody's really, really glad that somebody, an uncle, a brother, a mom, or dad, brought somebody to the pool and taught them how to swim. It's just you can't do that if you don't have a pool, and a lot of people don't have one. So it's important. Kern River is probably not a good place for your first lesson. So, anyway, folks, this is a benefit assessment. It's not a tax. This is voluntary. If you don't like it, you vote no on it. It's important for everybody to understand that. We're talking about $4 a month to fix our public pool and to fix our senior center that's in desperate need. This is not a mandated tax. God knows I oppose all taxes, and the California and the feds are going to keep hitting us with that anyway, so we don't need to add to that. But I think for $49 a year to help us fix our pool and our senior center and upgrade some facilities is pretty much money well spent. And as Ron mentioned, and the Park and Rec budget is 22% less than it was in 2009. I mean, good heavens. Look, we're never going to fix the pool if we don't do something. I think that I've said this from the first time this was mentioned, that we live in the middle of the desert, and we have the highest per capita income in the United States, and we don't have a swimming pool. I mean, I think you're sending a message out to our ESDPs when they look at our brochures and stuff. It's just not a good message. It reeks of being dysfunctional. I'm sorry, it just does. Every little dumpy hotel in America has a little brochure, and they advertise a pool, whether they have one or not. Have y'all noticed that? And they take a busted-up Solaflex and stick it in a broom closet, and they call that a gym. But by God, they've got it on the brochure, because in order to compete, you have to have that. We have to compete a little bit so it looks like we're not complete Hooterville when PhD young people want to come move here. I don't know. I'm sorry. It just seems like it's me. But Trona has an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Heavenly days. Trona does. We went and swam in that in 1984, and I said, holy Toledo, look at this thing. We don't want to have Trona have a big Olympic pool, and we don't have one. Surveys have shown that most comparable cities, and I know because I helped Ron and them do the one a year ago, the average is 1 pool. Many cities, little small dumpy towns, have 2 pools. Some have 3 pools. Very few of them have no pools. So I don't know. Ridgecrest needs a pool, and we did a survey last year that was part of this whole program that asked the town, what do you want? What are your priorities? We had 2 or 3 people tonight talk about priorities. Okay, we haven't gone crazy with it, but we did do a survey, and the priority came out clear as a bell. There were a few things in the survey we didn't want to know, but okie dokie. But the 2 things, flat out was screaming, was the public wants the pool and they want the seniors. Well, that shouldn't be any surprising, because as a matter of community, we need to take care of our old folks and we need to take care of our young folks. How about that? I think it sends a little message. So we've got great local fundraising efforts going on with Mr. Morgan. I think it's terrific, but we need a whole lot of money here. And it's going to take a whole lot of spaghetti dinners and so forth to get to the number we got to get to. Number 2, we got a $15 million goal with another group to build a magnificent aquatic Vegas-style center. But that's going to be between you and me private. I mean, that's probably going to be a ways off. And is temporarily tabled for now. So what do? We got a wonderful splash pad to help give us a little yahoo until we get this thing going. Very cost-effective, cheap program, successful all over the country. That's a stopgap, but now it'll be put right next to the pool where it'll go. It'll be a nice complex. We're getting there. We got something. So anyway, also, as long-term electric costs go up and water goes up, and they keep saying that we're going to have to be 50 gallons a day to fill a pool in 5 years from now. If California keeps doing what they're doing, it's probably going to be about 10 grand. And I bet we have lots of people show up at that public pool. What do you think about that? So people are going to be scaling down, and they're going to be going and using more public facilities more and more, I think, whether we like it or not. Funds legally is always a big issue. They can't be used for anything else. And that bugs me, and it bugs everybody. When Congress does it or anybody does it. It's a real, are you kidding me? It's a massive trust issue. So what I'm being told is that you can't touch the funds. That the funds are for the things that are on this sheet, and that's it. Is that correct? I mean, Ron and Lloyd and everybody? The funds are for what we say in here.
Yes. Yes.
All right. It's just, that's just a major, bone of contention. So, look, last year when we brought this thing up, I had a couple of concerns. Before we were going to send a proposal to the public, I wanted assurances that our park and recreation budget and services were in keeping with many of our fellow sister city desert community. What are they doing, right? So I did an analysis, the staff did an analysis, we called 20-something cities, and the analysis showed last year that Ridgecrest, in fact, was very comparable concerning, we were within 2% of 13 of the other comparable cities concerning the relationship between our, what the Parks and Rec budget was versus the general budget. And 2019, they just finished another analysis taking a look at another 17 cities with comparable populations, and the results show that the fund, now here, some people said, yeah, well, you've used real rich cities. Yeah, I knocked out 2 of them. I knocked out Monterey and Burlingame. Give me a break. However, even when you knock out 1 or 2 of the real, what we know to be exclusive areas, the number still came out to be like they've got $29 million in their budget, and we've got less than 16. So the bottom line is here, many cities have got 80 to 100 to 200% more money than we do in their budgets. We just don't have it, period. So we've got to do something, right? So, the other thing is they looked at Lemoore and 29 Palms, little smaller communities that are, based on their military activity. And basically, it's kind of a sad thing because when you look at all the cities in California, Ridgecrest is down there at the very, very near bottom, if not the bottom, if you take out Measure B. We might even be the bottom. Now, don't put that in the paper because we can't, but we're like real close to the bottom of the whole list. So, look, Ridgecrest is unique, but not in a great way economically. Most of these cities in big metropolitan areas have huge revenue streams. We just don't have it. We receive very little sales tax, about $3.3 million. Some of these smaller towns have sales taxes of $15 million. What? We got 3, right? So they enjoy millions of dollars in tourism, funds from maintenance and assessment district, higher property taxes. We just don't have it. So anyway, bottom line, we got to do with what we got to do as best we can. I don't know. Current status, tonight's vote. I've looked at the engineering report, the resolutions, and the packet that the staff put together. I think they did a very nice job tonight in presenting it and answering most of the questions. I'm not real happy with the $1.4 million to change the light bulb thing. And Mike Neal, I knew Mike was going to deal with that one. And I'm dealing with it too. But here's the deal. That's not like boom, done. It has to go through the Quality of Life Committee. It's got to go through the council. And I'm not approving $1.4 million to change light bulbs, Mike. Not happening. So some of these things are, are estimates, okay? So we had two articles, one in the Daily Independent, one in the News Review, talking about this issue. And one of the approaches is that we had several concerns that the plan needs further details and refinement. Yes, it does. Regarding the bond debt service for the pool. Yep. Timeline. Yep. Exact prioritization. Yep. And need for official estimates. Yep. And all of that has been admitted up here. Absolutely. And that will be done. And it's not like, well, yeah, but you got it and we're going to, here comes the surprises. No, it's got to go through all of us to look at it. We're not putting $1 million light bulbs in. All right. So what are we trying to do tonight? We're trying to simply determine by a public vote is whether or not the town is interested in paying for $4 a month for a nice pool, a renovated senior center, and if the public says yes, then we'll work out the fine details later. If not, well, then we won't. How about that? This is a voluntary program, not a tax. So we're not voting, boom, that's it. It's a voluntary program. We're just sending things out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say that I plan on voting yes on this with one minor concession and clarification, but it's a big one. And Ron and I talked last night, we talked this morning. Now I'm going to say it publicly. I strongly feel that continual oversight is extremely important here. And while the proposed letter that goes to the public states that this project by law, and I quote, requires annual public hearings, financial audits, and yearly reports, I would like to also clarify this as follows and add the following words. All interim proposals, project prioritizations, and exact cost allocations should be approved and all details fully vetted via a vote of the Quality of Life Committee with eventual concurrence of the council. Now, what I just said was understood anyway because it falls under the cognizance, but for the public's benefit, mine and all the council, and especially the lawyer and the city manager, I want it stated that before we do any of these things on this list, it needs to be approved and voted on by the Quality of Life Committee, and then eventually for the annual review by the council. And Ron, you agree? And Lloyd?
Yes.
Lloyd?
Yes.
All right. Hot diggity dogs. All right. Currently, this committee is comprised of Mayor Pro Tem Stevens, Councilman Heyman, and Planning Commissioners Dehan and Mackey. So they'll be looking at the light bulbs and everything else. So, in closing, I just want everybody to please consider the fact that our town needs a pool. And we need a senior center. We need to take care of our young people, and we need to take care of our old people. $4 a month, in my opinion, is cheap enough to do that. It's a great way to get this done. So with 2 yeses here, I'm going to vote yes on these 2 resolutions as long as we have that minor clarification. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we are then bringing it to council. Is there a motion to approve the resolution, the formation of the Ridgecrest Parks and Recreation Facilities Assessment District, and send it out to a vote?
I do believe we need, because it's a 218, we need to do 2 separate resolution approvals.
Right.
Okay.
So I motion initiating proceedings for the formation of the Ridgecrest Park and Recreational Facilities Assessment District.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. 5 ayes, motion carries.
I make a motion to approve the engineer's report for the formation of the Ridgecrest Park and Recreational Facilities Assessment District and declare the city's intention to levy assessments, conduct the required protest ballot proceeding, and setting a time and place for the public hearing.
Is there a second on that?
Second.
1 second. Okay, we're going to have to do a roll call vote on this one. We don't have a secondary slide. Mayor Breeden?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Martin?
Yes.
Mr. Heyman?
Yes.
Mr. Mauer?
Yes.
5 ayes, motion carries.
Okay. Thank you all. We appreciate it. We still got a couple of more items, but we thank you for your attendance and your comments and your willingness to speak. Okay, the next item is a discussion and provide guidance to the city's representative to the Board of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Mr.
Do we
Heyman?
want to take like a 2-minute thing so that
Pardon me?
Do we want to take like a 2-minute thing so that everybody can clear out and we can focus?
All right, we'll take a 2-minute, well, 2 minute isn't enough.
Sorry.
5-minute break.
Okay. Sorry, it's just hard to hear when everybody's shuffling and getting in.
You want me to go shuffle them out so we can move on? Yeah, see, like, build in.
Okay, we're going to get started back here again. Item number 6 is discussion and provide guidance to the city's representative on the board of the Union Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Is there anybody who wants to provide information, or Scott, do you wish to give information to us?
So I'll just give a brief update on the GA, and then if anybody has guidance. So work continues to be in progress. There's presentations tomorrow at the GA meeting, the Desert Research Institute, or what's called the DRI. They have been doing modeling on water quality, what they call TDS levels in the water, which stand for total dissolved solid. So it's their way of identifying like good drinking water or clear water, and then water on out, to what's considered brackish water. So they're going to be presenting that at the meeting tomorrow. They're currently working on letters going out to urge registration of wells. So they had to redraft some letters, and so they'll be addressing that again at the GA meeting tomorrow. So hopefully there'll be action on that. Ongoing and furthering of well monitoring is currently going on. So, and discussions on the importation of water. My understanding is there should pretty quickly be a report on some of the research into the imported water and what is going to be available and cost, that kind of thing. So anyway, so that's kind of the highlights. Nothing's really changed. These things have been ongoing now for a period of time. So I'm open to the rest of council if you have any suggestions or guidance or follow-up.
I just had a quick question. If someone doesn't register, what's going to happen?
Well, currently, there will be non-de minimis users are exempt from any fees or that kind of thing at this time. So the one of the letters going out, there will be penalties and fees assessed to pumpers that do not register with the Groundwater Authority. So that is part of the letter process that's going out. So it's almost like a two separate thing. One's for the to try to get registration of the de minimis users, and then the other one is to follow up on pumpers and non-de minimis users that have not registered yet, and that let them know that fees and penalties are coming down the pike. So, any other questions from council or thoughts, input?
Is there questions from the public, please?
Yes, a little input for you, Scott. Since you don't get to the water district meetings, let me make you aware that the last water district, I believe it was finance committee meeting, was basically stated that Mr. Kaczynski was going to bring up the subject of talking about how to get people transitioned from swamp coolers to AC as a means of saving water. Now, of course, this means if you were to do that, even in a moderate-sized house, you would probably pay $300+ a month to run your AC instead of maybe $50 to run your swamp coolers or whatever. At the same time, the water district in its rating structure in Tier 1 are allowing 45 gallons of water per day for swamp cooler needs. So I tried to point out to them that they were basically speaking out of both sides of their mouth on this, saying one thing and one issue and something else, acting like, it's a big deal about how much water the swamp coolers are using by talking about getting people onto AC. So just keep that in mind when and if he brings that up. And the other thing, prompted by Ms. Stevens' questions, is it's a given that at some point in time, all well owners are going to be pressured to register and gauge their wells and report their water usage. They may go slow at the small well owners, quote unquote, before they do that, but the state people have basically already said, they're going to make that happen. And of course, we all know how that happens. You get told to do it, and a lot of those well owners are going to say, forget you. I've been pumping water for 30, 40 years without reporting it. And they're going to say, that's okay, we'll just fine you. And they'll say, fine, come get your money. Well, they don't care if they get their money. They just let the fines rack up, and eventually they just place a lien on the property. And then, eventually, if the person is stubborn enough and resists, like Mr. Howard did several years ago, you lose your property. So that's where that one's probably going to go, and that could actually conceivably almost happen or could happen to some of those people with not a lot of money on wells out in the rural areas.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? Okay. Then we will go on to the next item, which is committee reports. City Org.
Did not meet.
Finance Committee.
Did not meet.
Infrastructure.
Next Thursday, a week from tomorrow.
Parks, Rec, and Quality of Life.
We reported at the last meeting.
Youth Advisory Council.
I didn't meet.
Okay. The Action Committee. It's a biannual one, so we're not at that yet.
Looks like heads up says March.
March.
So if that's getting scheduled. The Youth Advisory is supposed to say, instead of Scott, Wallace, just as a heads up.
It's supposed to say Lindsay and Wallace under Youth Advisory?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then. Okay, we are now on the RECVB.
Just a quick rundown. So January 19th and 20th, Doug went to San Diego Travel and Adventure Show, put out 1,500 pieces of literature, including the RECVB Visitor's Guide, Death Valley, Scenic P95, and other literature. There were 16 people at that, 1,000 people in attendance there, February the 13th. The RECVB has a great booth display from poster, garden, and Doug assembled to demonstrate to the director the effects of it for the upcoming show. It has LED backlights, which highlight the Trona Pinnacles. It's very nice looking. February 16th and 17th, they attended the LA Travel and Adventure Show. They're going to premiere the new RECVB booth display. February the 28th, they'll attend Flix, the Film Liaisons in California, meeting in Vallejo Film Office. March 1st, they leave Vallejo to go to Sacramento for a meeting regarding the California Welcome Center. They're meeting with their marketing people. Operations review, their September the 30th, was finalized by Berkey, Cox, and Evans. They sent final documents to the RECVB. The Ridgecrest Sports Commission, they met with the IWB youth baseball leaders working with the Sierra Sands School District in Saracoso for agreements on co-use of the sporting facilities. And wildflowers, the REC is working with Ramon on a wildflower campaign with Carrie and Elizabeth to give information about promoting the wildlife season. Apparently, on GoRidgecrest.com, apparently when they got some news coverage the last time we had a wildflower super bloom. One of the many little communities were just packed, so they're trying to jump on that and get something going in anticipation. January, no productions. Inyukan Airport, January, there were 2 large productions for filming. The total community spend for January was $70,198. That's it.
Okay, other committees, boards, or commissions?
We had economic development last week, and we talked about the Main Street America program. Ashlyn went to a one-day training seminar on that, and we're looking at participating in that program. It gives you access to lots of grants and things and how to improve your Main Street areas. He also gave some updates on economic development related activities. The parcel just north of the new Walmart will be coming forward to Planning Commission. It's going to be a nice development project with some commercial things happening there. He is going to be presenting at our next meeting some research on how to incentivize development and reusing older buildings. And then also we looked some at the company and I forgot the name of it again. What is it? Civic Plus? Civic Plus, for the website and the app. And we looked at some of the other cities that have used them in their websites. So you can go to the Civic Plus and look at a sampling of other cities that they've done and what their websites look like.
Sorry, I skipped that committee. Didn't
That's
mean
okay.
to do that. Thank you. Okay, now other boards and commissions.
Karen Cog tomorrow.
Okay. City managers report.
He's not here.
We'll come back to that. Future agenda items?
I have was that announcements? No, future agenda, no. I don't have that.
I have a comment on future agenda. Back in our parks meeting, there was a fellow that presented some information and wants to have it brought before the city council to have a Frisbee park, and we haven't followed through on that, and I don't know if you want to bring that up now or later or
Jason, the Frisbee golf facility that the man came and had a presentation that he wanted to show. Can we make sure that that's on the next quality of life agenda?
Yeah, I gave him my number.
Okay.
Tonight.
yeah, because I saw him in the back of the audience there, but that's what reminded me of it.
But yeah, if we can make sure, because that we had told him it would be on the next quality of life. Thank you.
And the city manager does not have a report.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, mayor and council comments. Is there any?
Not for me.
Well, I just wanted to mention that Jed had said that there is a ribbon cutting for the new animal shelter for the cat room tomorrow at 1:30. So come.
Okay, thank you. There is also next Thursday, Thursday the 28th is the Economic Outlook Conference held here. And there's a number of people speaking, and it'll be a very exciting meeting. And I know I think our table is full, but there are some individual tickets are still available if anybody's interested. Okay, no other comments? Okay, make a motion to adjourn, and we do. Thank you. We're adjourned.
I've been talking today.